The game Triple H, what a life story this man could tell. Hunter's journey from humble beginnings to top dog in WWE really is an interesting one when you consider everything that's happened from the mid-90s right up until the here and now. Today though, I want to go back long before he became head of creative, way before his time running NXT, before the championship reigns, before Evolution and before D-Generation X. We're talking about Terra, Ryzing, Jean-Paul Levesque and the original Blue Blood Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Hunter's character evolution is quite remarkable. Going from an aristocratic snob to an all-conquering king of kings was something that developed over eras of pro wrestling, and the fact that Hunter was able to switch his gimmick from something destined to mid-card forever to a fully fledged main event ass-kicker should be highlighted. So that's my job today. We're going to talk about Triple H's early days in pro wrestling. Paul Levesque watched some pro wrestling at the age of 5 and he got hooked in right away. After graduating high school, he began entering bodybuilding competitions inspired by the wrestlers he saw on TV, and he got a meeting with Killer Kowalski after badgering Ted Arcidi at a gym that Hunter managed. Triple H said it wasn't until Arcidi walked into the gym that he realized that wrestling wasn't this far-fetched fantasy world on TV, and it was through Hunter's friendship with Arcidi that the future King of Kings thought that wrestling could be a real option in terms of a career. Kowalski trained Hunter at his wrestling school in Malden, Massachusetts, and he debuted in Kowalski's IWF promotion as Terra Ryzing. Kowalski wanted to call Triple H the Terrorizer, and when Hunter requested a normal name, like a first and last name, Kowalski just wasn't taking any nonsense that day, so he drew a line down the Terrorizer name and he said, "There, that's your first and last name, Terrorizer." The name was altered to Terra Ryzing, and Triple H would begin working independents around the New England area for around a year. The gym that Hunter worked at used a sales company, and the sales company were holding a convention that included guest speaker Ric Flair. So Hunter had a chance to meet his idol through this convention, and he was going to try to make the most of it. Triple H brought along his resume, 8x10 photos he had made up, and a bunch of matches on tape in hopes that he could talk to Ric Flair in regards to getting a job with World Championship Wrestling. Hunter, unfortunately, could only manage a quick photo with Flair, and he wasn't able to present his resume to the Nature Boy. Hunter was able to talk to WCW live promoter Chip Burnham though, and Chip already knew that Hunter wrestled, so Hunter was able to hand his resume and tapes over, and then he'd have to wait it out and just hope for the best. Chip gave the tapes over to WCW president Bob Dew, and a week later, Bob called Triple H at the gym to let him know that Eric Bischoff would soon be getting in touch, and when Bischoff got on the phone to Hunter, Triple H requested a 5-minute tryout, stating Eric would know within 5 minutes if he wanted to sign Terra Ryzing or not, and if he didn't, then Eric only wasted 5 minutes of his busy schedule. Terra Ryzing's WCW tryout match ended up making it to TV. He wrestled Keith Cole on the WCW Saturday Night that aired on the 12th of February 1994, and Terra Ryzing impressed Eric Bischoff with his performance. William Regal watched the match and he thought Hunter's footwork needed improving, but still he saw something special in this kid. And indeed, you're going to notice the same when you watch this match back. Hunter's positioning is a bit off in terms of playing up for the cameras. He trips over his feet a little after performing a backbreaker, and in general, you can tell that he was maybe a little nervous throughout this tryout match, but he still looked good. Hunter won the match with an inverted Indian deathlock. This would serve as his finisher for a little while, and after the bout, Eric Bischoff offered him a 2-year deal at $52,000 per year. Hunter, incredibly, declined the offer, instead offering Eric 1 year at $52,000 with the possibility of a raise in year 2. Triple H said Eric would know if Terra Ryzing was worth more after a year's work, or if Hunter just wasn't worth anything at all. And so Terra Ryzing signed for WCW for 1 year, even though he could have signed for 2 years guaranteed. Terra Ryzing began getting regular matches at TV tapings. His second televised match was against Larry Santo on the 26th of February episode of Saturday Night, winning again with an inverted Indian deathlock, and then the well-documented Triple H vs Road Dogg WCW match happened at Center Stage. This one was highlighted on WWE Network as a hidden gem, seeing as it included 2 members of the future D-Generation X stable during their days in World Championship Wrestling. Throughout these initial days in Atlanta, someone who was always with Triple H was Steve Regal, and Regal said he taught Hunter everything that Regal knew, and he helped him a lot with his footwork. Regal also said that Hunter was constantly in the WCW power plant trying to improve and trying to get better for TV matches, and you do notice this when watching his progression during these early days in World Championship Wrestling. His improvements over those first few months don't get talked about enough, but I think that also comes down to WWE keeping these matches locked up and making them harder to watch for more casual pro wrestling fans. Triple H also credits Terry Taylor as a man who helped him immensely in getting ready for the big time. According to Triple H in his Thy Kingdom Come documentary, he was called to the CNN Center for a meeting regarding his character. He was greeted by Ric Flair, and Flair wanted to do away with the whole Terra Ryzing thing and try something new. He mistakenly thought that Triple H's surname was pronounced Levesque, but that didn't matter. The surname gave Flair the bright idea of turning Terra Ryzing into a French aristocrat because, quote, it had never been done before. Hunter didn't know how to speak French, he was given no direction about how this character should act or behave, so he put on the best French accent he could, and he cut his first Jean-Paul Levesque promo on the June 18th, 1994 edition of WCW Pro, and it's pretty rough.
I'm here to set the record straight today. I want to tell everybody in WCW why I was called Terra Ryzing. I was brought here as a boy from France to be educated in the best schools in the United States. And I got the name by beating up all the American punks in the schools. I was given the nickname Terra Ryzing. Well, now, I am no longer a boy. I am Jean-Paul Levesque, the greatest professional wrestler in the world today. Remember the name, Jean-Paul Levesque.
Yeah, so Terra Ryzing was apparently always French. He didn't want to be called Terra Ryzing anymore because he's a man now, and he wants to be known by his real name, Jean-Paul Levesque. Alright. The French accent, the very bad French accent, is one of those things that could easily lead to a wrestler's stock going way, way down. Not because Paul's a Frenchman, but because he's pretending to be a Frenchman. How he ever bounced back from this is a mystery, but I fully believe if Hunter stayed in WCW, then he would have become a regular on WCW Worldwide while the big boys worked on Nitro every week. Nothing against his wrestling abilities, it's all down to the character. Here's another Jean-Paul Levesque promo where he explains why he came to America to become a pro wrestler.
Gordon, I have had everything in my life. I have had the best education, all the money. I have had every woman I have ever wanted. But the one thing that I have never had is a championship. And that is why I am here, to be the world champion of WCW. And if it is Hulk Hogan, I will take whoever it is in the way of you to become the world champion. Whatever step I have to take, I will take it to become the greatest of all time.
Three things were notable about Jean-Paul Levesque. First, his Starrcade match with Alex Wright. This is always brought up as a way to mock Triple H, like, ha, Triple H jobbed out Alex Wright at Starrcade. But, you know, so what? Both Alex and Hunter debuted in WCW around the same time, roughly. Their best days were still way ahead of them. They both put on a decent match, and at the time, it made more sense for the babyface to win this match that took place in the first half of Starrcade 1994. There's absolutely no shame in losing the Alex Wright guys, come on. The second notable thing about Jean-Paul Levesque was his tag team with Lord Steven Regal. These two shared a few things in common from a character standpoint, mainly their disdain for American wrestling fans and their love of their home countries, so it was a no-brainer to put these two together. They worked as a tag team very, very briefly, as in they only had one televised match together, but the pairing looked really promising. People still talk about it today. Paul was in danger of becoming another WCW casualty for sure around this time, but I do wish we got to see a little more of Steve Regal and Triple H teaming up. The third and maybe the most important aspect of Jean-Paul Levesque is the fact that the character was pretty much the blueprint for Hunter Hearst Helmsley. From the ring attire to the pose, from the better-than-you demeanor to the aristocratic values of the character, take away the accent and the poet shirt he used during his entrance, and you've pretty much got the very early stages of the blue blood Hunter Hearst Helmsley. With all this being said, it is hard to go back to Jean-Paul Levesque without having a laugh at the gimmick. Once you've seen Triple H screaming that he's that damn good, and once you've seen him walk down the ring with Motorhead blasting in the arena, it's really strange seeing him put on a French accent and going all in with a character that just screams mid-card. Still, as mentioned, a lot of Jean-Paul Levesque carried over to WWF. It's unknown if the French gimmick was what made WWF take notice, but they liked it enough that it would more or less carry over in New York with a few alterations. When Hunter's one-year deal was coming to an end with WCW, he decided to reach out to Vince McMahon to see about coming to WWF. According to Hunter, he decided to call WWF because WCW was moving away from live shows, and Triple H didn't want to sit around and wait for TV tapings before he could wrestle. Triple H said, "I called Vince, came up for a meeting, and when I had gone in, the one thing that I had said to Vince that, knowing him now, I think he probably respected more than anything, he said, 'Why do you want to leave?' And I said, 'One of the biggest reasons I want to leave is because they're cutting out house shows and they're going to be more TV based. They're just going to be working a few times a month. I said I didn't get in this business to be rich, I just want to be great. And the only way I'm going to get great at this is to work every day. I want to work 300 days a year. I want to work every night. I want to wrestle the best wrestlers in the world. I want to get great at this, and I'm not going to get great in WCW. That's the biggest reason. I said, I'm just looking for the opportunity to do that.' When he called me back, he said, 'You said to me a couple of weeks ago you were looking to work every day. I'll give you my word. You'll make more money, and I guarantee you'll work every day. And you'll work against the best in the business today. You'll work against all of them. You want to be great? I'm offering you the opportunity to go out and learn to be great.'" Vince McMahon said about signing Jean-Paul Levesque, "In bringing him in, we weren't just going to bring him in like anyone else or like a journeyman. You knew he was someone special. So you're going to have a spot for someone you know that's special, at least to see whether they could cut it and to give them that opportunity." Hunter took the offer from Vince, and he would then learn about his updated gimmick. Keep in mind that everyone who debuted in WWF at that time was saddled with an over-the-top gimmick, whether they were in line for an early push or not. So Hunter's gimmick, or lack of big change in his gimmick, wasn't a burial or anything like that. Jean-Paul Levesque would become Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Apparently, J.J. Dillon suggested the name Reginald DuPont Helmsley, but Hunter requested a change and the office agreed, settling on the name that we all know to this day. It's been said that the final name was based on famous rich people. Helmsley came from Leona Helmsley, nicknamed the Queen of Mean. She was a wealthy hotelier who was convicted of tax evasion, among other things. Hearst came from the Hearst newspaper family that dated all the way back to 1880, when George Hearst purchased the San Francisco Daily Examiner. Today they own the San Francisco Chronicle, the Houston Chronicle, Cosmopolitan Magazine, and Esquire, along with 50% ownership of A&E Networks. And Hunter, who knows, but think of a better name beginning with H for a pro wrestler that wasn't already taken. The Hunter Hearst Helmsley character was a way for Vince McMahon to take a jab at his snobby neighbours living in Greenwich. Apparently, a few folks who lived close by looked down at Vince's sports entertainment empire, so the character of Hunter Hearst Helmsley was basically Vince's way of getting back at his neighbours. Sounds petty, but really not all that hard to believe either. Hunter Hearst Helmsley would get revealed to WWF audiences through some vignettes that were filmed in his mansion, and just like the first Jean-Paul Levesque promos, it really throws you off when you hear Hunter talking with an accent. Hunter was supposed to be an American elitist, a blue blood from Connecticut, but he had this kind of bad English accent that no one else could pull off but Triple H. Again, compare it to the Triple H of today and it's pretty funny. Have a listen.
"Hello, Hunter Hearst Helmsley here. You know, when it comes to riffraff, delinquents, and hooligans, the World Wrestling Federation has more than its fair share. Losers work hard to become champions, but for someone like me, being a champion just comes naturally."
So Helmsley's got a problem with guys like the Bushwhackers, the Head Shrinkers, and the Smoking Guns. These guys don't know a thing about class, civility, and how to be a gentleman. Helmsley's here to teach these guys some manners. He says losers become champions, but for someone like Hunter Hearst Helmsley, being champion comes naturally. You can rip me apart all you want, I think it's a good vignette. Hunter's attitude changes when he starts talking about teaching these guys how to conduct themselves, and he almost turns evil for a moment before switching back to being a snobby Greenwich blue blood. It's almost like that mean streak that we talk about so much now was there all along. I also like the fact that he actually said riffraff. It's so good. Riffraff, delinquents, and hooligans. Triple H would never fall into these categories. Nope, never. Another vignette saw Helmsley sitting in his mansion once again, only this time he doesn't speak. He notices the camera and then he just waves his hand to brush us off because we aren't worthy of Hunter's time. I'll defend this again as good heel work. Hunter Hearst Helmsley was such a snob that he wouldn't speak during his introductory vignettes. In another vignette, Hunter simply says, quote, "Think of it, civility." He then says we aren't listening to him and the video ends. You can see a lot of Lord Stephen Regal in this one, I think, as short as it is. After these vignettes aired, Helmsley was ready to make his in-ring debut. His television debut happened on the 30th of April episode of Challenge against Bug Zoomhoff, but here's the thing. While his second TV appearance aired on Superstars the following week, a match against Sonny Rogers, the Superstars match was actually taped before the Challenge match, so the Sonny Rogers match serves as the real WWF in-ring debut of Triple H, but not his TV debut due to the delay between Challenge and Superstar tapings. Either way, two things are evident here. One, Triple H was already squashing jobbers, and two, he was being positioned favourably from the get-go. I should also note too, before moving on, that Hunter's finishing move was a cutter named the Pedigree Pandemonium. Diamond Dallas Page asked Triple H if he would stop using the cutter as a favour to him, and Hunter stopped using the move. Hunter Hearst Helmsley would begin his run destroying enhancement talent, but it was the character that was front and center here. Hunter upgraded his little pose to be even more annoying. He turned his rather big nose up at fans as he walked into the arena. He would show his disgust at his opponents by dominating them in the ring in an effort to bring some class and sophistication to his matches. Eventually, he would start bringing valets to the ring to show that only the finest women hang around Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And as far as heels go, there was absolutely nothing likable about this guy at all. So he was a good heel in my opinion. Do keep in mind the level of heels in WWF during 95 and 96 during your own assessment though. Diesel, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid would take Helmsley in as part of the clique. Hunter was pretty big on clean living, so the clique saw great value in having at least one sober guy in their group. Plus, Triple H liked to talk about the business a lot, and so did the clique. There's arguments to be made both ways in regards to Hunter's association with the group, but the guys remained friends throughout their whole careers and beyond, which does seem to be a rarity in pro wrestling when you watch from the outside. Hunter's earliest feuds came in the form of Henry Godwin and Duke the Dumpster Droese, and Hunter's hard work led to him jobbing to the Ultimate Warrior at his first ever WrestleMania in a well-documented matchup. There's no need for me to talk about that now because I've talked about it before in previous videos. Hunter's next character evolution would be his most important though. His King of the Ring 1997 victory led to his first ever quote-unquote My Time promo, where he spoke about getting held down and punished for the actions of others in the clique. And later in the year when Hunter joined DX, he once again delivered a similar promo where he spoke about Vince not giving him opportunities, so Triple H was going to take those opportunities for himself. Long after the early DX stuff, we also got the infamous I Am the Game promo when Triple H was being interviewed by Jim Ross. But again, I've covered all this. Check out my beginning of DX and Becoming the Game videos if you want to pick up where this one leaves off. Triple H's journey and character changes in wrestling sure are interesting though. I don't think anyone could have predicted Triple H would be in this position he's in today when looking back at Terra, Ryzing, John Paul Levesque, and even the blue blood Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Maybe even more so when Hunter joined DX, it was almost impossible to think of this guy wearing a suit and becoming the corporate face of WWE in the eyes of fans today. But as his old dad-in-law used to say, anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation. Thanks for watching guys, and take care.
1, 2, is this on?
I'm not gonna listen to anybody. Tell me who and what to be. Not trying to be like everybody. Time to play Michael Lee. It's time to run.
Yo, tell me who the time it is, yo.
It's time to run.
Yo, you keep your finger off the switch, gun.
The evolution of Triple H's character in wrestling has always fascinated me. The fact that this snobby blue blood gimmick could morph into the all-dominating King of Kings proves that anything is possible within the world of wrestling. And yes, to get it out of the way, there are many things we can criticise Triple H over, and his rise to the top may have been fast-tracked in the eyes of many fans, but still, when Triple H became the game, and when Triple H proclaimed that it was now his time, the WWF got itself one of their most famous, well-known heels that would go on to leave his mark. The character of the game, the gimmick in itself, I thought was excellent. Triple H wasn't just the best wrestler in the game, but he was the game itself. This methodical yet aggressive cerebral assassin who had no mercy and no remorse, completely obsessed about standing above all others in his quest to reign supreme. While people will always place an asterisk beside Triple H's accomplishments in wrestling, there's a kind of bittersweet poetry to his relationship with the McMahons, kind of feeding into his wrestling persona of doing whatever it takes by any means necessary. And also, the WWF did a masterful job of exploiting the McMahon-Helmsley relationship on TV screens, a professional and personal relationship which some fans still have trouble getting over today. But anyway, this video will look at how Triple H morphed into the game, mainly covering 1999 when Hunter Hearst Helmsley finally made it to the top of the ladder. The career of Triple H took its first drastic turn when Hunter was paired with Shawn Michaels in 1997, forming the infamous D-Generation X stable. When Shawn was forced into an early retirement, Hunter picked up the ball and ran forward with his own version of DX. Triple H has said that many guys in the back felt that DX was over after Shawn had retired. People said that Triple H was no Shawn Michaels, and a new incarnation of the groundbreaking DX stable would always feel watered down in comparison to the original, but Hunter's DX army proved to be insanely popular. With the New Age Outlaws and X-Pac now wearing the green and black D-Generation X colours, Hunter's version of DX became a must-see attraction of the Attitude Era. Let's not forget about Chyna either, a woman who would play a key role in Triple H's journey to become the game. Chyna became the first woman to ever compete in a Royal Rumble match at the beginning of 1999. The very next night on Raw, Chyna also turned her back on Triple H and D-Generation X when she joined Vince McMahon's corporation. To pull this off, Triple H had a WWF title match against champion The Rock, an I Quit match that Triple H seemingly had in the bag until Kane and the corporation made an appearance, threatening to chokeslam Chyna if Hunter didn't say the words, "I quit." Worried about Chyna's safety, Triple H gave up the match and his chance to become the WWF champion, hoping this would be enough for the Big Red Machine to let go of Chyna. But when Triple H got back in the ring, Chyna backstabbed Hunter. It was all a big ploy to ensure The Rock kept the WWF championship, and now Triple H had lost the woman who stood by his side during his complete D-Generation X run and beyond. Triple H would carry on as the leader of DX while Chyna aligned herself with the corporation. In particular, Chyna aligned herself with Kane. At the St. Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view in February of 1999, Chyna and Kane were able to defeat Triple H and X-Pac in a tag team match, and we are now on our way to WrestleMania 15. At the biggest show of the year, Triple H would take on Kane in a singles match while X-Pac would challenge Shane McMahon for the European title. I remember watching WrestleMania 15 and being really took by surprise as the show unfolded. Triple H turned heel at WrestleMania, and the heel turn was done over the course of 2 matches, completely swerving the audience in attendance and the audience watching at home. The Triple H vs Kane match was admittedly pretty average in terms of the in-ring action, but the story told here, and the story in the X-Pac match, would kickstart Triple H's journey to becoming a main event player in the WWF. China double-crossed Kane during this match, hitting the Big Red Machine with a steel chair before reuniting with Triple H. We all thought, naturally, that this meant China was back in D-Generation X. Later on in the evening, during the Shane McMahon vs X-Pac match, Triple H hit the ring along with China, and Hunter hit X-Pac with the pedigree, allowing Shane McMahon to win the European Championship while sending waves of confusion across the audience in attendance. Triple H had just left D-Generation X, the leader of WWF's most popular faction at the time, and he had decided to go back to the dark side and join forces with Vince McMahon and the corporation. To solidify this heel turn, Triple H destroyed X-Pac and the New Age Outlaws after the match before Kane made an appearance for the save. What's interesting to note here is that the other members of DX did not want the faction to end. In reality, X-Pac and the New Age Outlaws felt that DX were just hitting their peak in terms of popularity. Merchandise was flying off the shelves, every member had a guaranteed spot on the WWF cards, with the New Age Outlaws in particular getting more popular than ever before. But Hunter wanted to move on. Triple H wanted to shift his focus on becoming the WWF's biggest ever heel. The WWF Championship was something that Hunter couldn't get his hands on while he was leading the D-Generation X stable, and Triple H felt that breaking away to become a villain would bring him more main event opportunities. He wasn't wrong. D-Generation X surely didn't hold Triple H back, but at the same time, Hunter hadn't won the WWF Championship. Creatively, Triple H felt his DX story had came to an end, and it was now time to try something different. The Outlaws and X-Pac would still come out in DX colours, and they still represented D-Generation X for a while, but by and large the faction kind of floundered without a strong leader at the forefront. D-Generation X would get back together eventually as a heel faction down the road, but that incarnation of DX was simply built to assist Triple H and his championship goals. Anyway, the night after WrestleMania 15, Triple H had a match with X-Pac. Shane McMahon and China interfered, leading to Kane making an appearance to help X-Pac. The numbers game was just too much for the Big Red Machine though, and Triple H was able to level Kane with a steel chair. The next week on Raw, Kane and X-Pac joined forces to win the WWF Tag Team Championships, while Triple H and China began blending into the corporation. Around this time too, The Undertaker was stalking Stephanie McMahon, so while Vince was off trying to protect his daughter, Shane McMahon moved into the spotlight, becoming the leader of what he called the new and improved corporation. Triple H defeated X-Pac at the Backlash pay-per-view after more interference from China and Kane. And speaking of Kane, Badass Billy Gunn got a little upset over the Big Red Machine's newfound relationship with X-Pac, leading to Billy Gunn eventually leaving DX also, meaning the faction only had two members for a little while, the Road Dogg and Sean Waltman. On the episode of SmackDown following Backlash, the corporate ministry was formed when Shane McMahon merged the corporation with The Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness stable, meaning that The Undertaker and Triple H were both on the same side. It didn't really live up to expectations. The ministry and the corporation were doing pretty well for themselves before the merger from hell took place, and even today, many fans look at the corporate ministry as unnecessary. Triple H, however, still wasn't where he needed to be in terms of the WWF title picture. During his early days in the corporation, The Rock was still in the faction, meaning Triple H was playing second fiddle. When The Rock left and the corporate ministry had formed, Triple H was again playing second fiddle, only this time to The Undertaker. While this was going on, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mick Foley, and eventually The Rock were leading the pack for the babyface side, so Triple H was still trying to climb into that upper echelon. Hunter was consistently in the semi-main event spots during this time period, but all signs were pointing to that big push to the WWF Championship. In the run-up to the Over the Edge 1999 pay-per-view, Hunter came out of his shell a little more, showing the first signs of the ass-kicking cerebral assassin when he destroyed a casket that had The Rock inside of it, Triple H using his new weapon of choice here, the sledgehammer. And for some reason, this always stood out for me as a turning point in Triple H's character progression. We hadn't really seen Triple H being this ruthless before. To go along with this new Triple H, Hunter changed his ring attire and his entrance music was changed to his higher brain pattern theme, a much better piece of entrance music in comparison to his corporate player theme. Hunter and The Rock squared off at the Over the Edge 1999 pay-per-view, not one of their best matches given the circumstances surrounding this very show. The Rock won via disqualification, while Hunter's Ministry of Darkness teammate The Undertaker defeated Steve Austin for the WWF Championship in the main event. The next night on Raw, Triple H defeated Mankind in a hardcore match, again using a sledgehammer to take out Mick Foley. It was around this time that even the commentators began talking about this new Triple H and how Hunter had been much more aggressive over the past few weeks. The fully loaded 1999 pay-per-view would be a pivotal night for Triple H. Before his WWF Championship #1 contendership match with The Rock, Chyna teamed up with Billy Gunn to take on X-Pac and the Road Dogg. The winner of this match would own the rights to the D-Generation X name. X-Pac and Road Dogg won the match, but all was not lost. Triple H worked with The Rock in an excellent strap match, and thanks to Chyna and Billy Gunn, Triple H was able to win the match, becoming the #1 contender for the WWF Championship. Hunter would get his shot at SummerSlam, and this was it. It was finally time for Hunter to hold the WWF Championship. There was something even more important that happened on July 25th, 1999, however, and you have to watch Sunday Night Heat before Fully Loaded in order to see what went down. A pre-recorded interview featuring Triple H and Jim Ross took place, and Triple H said the following: "This is about me. I don't need to be in the clique anymore. I don't need to be in DX anymore. This is about me reaching my goals. This goes back a long way. This goes back to the clique. This goes back to Madison Square Garden. Me walking to the ring and saying goodbye with my friends, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall and Shawn Michaels. Who got punished for that, JR? Me. You know why they did it to me? Because nobody in the office had the balls to do it to anybody else. They did it to me because I was the easy one. I was the one who would take it. Good old Triple H will rise to the occasion later on. Don't worry about it, he'll come through." Well, you know what? That makes me sick to my stomach. Every time I look at you guys, it makes me sick to think what you did to me, holding me back. You guys talk about being students of the game. I am the game, JR. There's nobody that eats, sleeps and breathes this business more than me, and now it's my time to prove that to the world. SummerSlam is my time to take what is mine, and that is becoming the WWF champion. This was the first time Triple H called himself The Game on television, and just a week prior, Triple H debuted his new theme music, a song named My Time, that included lyrics about being held down by the office and how Triple H wouldn't listen to others telling him who and what to be. Everything was set in place. All Triple H had to do now was win the WWF Championship at SummerSlam, and a lifetime goal would be met. The road to SummerSlam, however, would be extremely rocky. Before we get to SummerSlam and the build up to that pay-per-view, now would probably be a good time to talk about Owen Hart and the Game character. It's been said, or rather it's been rumoured for a long time, that the character of the Game was going to be given to Owen Hart, but Triple H recently debunked that myth during an interview recorded just this year, saying that the gimmick was nothing more than a nickname he said during the Jim Ross interview, and the name just stuck. There was never really any kind of plan to market the Game as an actual character. So yeah, I know people would have brought that up in the comments. It's been a rumour for a long time and it's been debunked by Triple H. I'll leave a link in the description for those who want to view that particular interview. There's been quite a lot said about the SummerSlam 1999 main event and how plans were changed on more than one occasion. A story that you'll hear online is that Chyna was originally going to face Steve Austin and win the WWF Championship, and there's also the story of Steve Austin refusing to lose to Triple H on pay-per-view, leading to Mankind being added to the match, a man who Steve Austin was apparently comfortable doing the job to. There's also the story of the WWF just wanting to surprise everyone with 2 title changes in 2 nights. So it really comes down to who you believe and what sources you go to for your information like this. Let's just look at what happened in the run up to SummerSlam before digging into unconfirmed rumours and speculation. On the Raw episode following Fully Loaded, everything looked pretty standard. Triple H cut a promo on Austin with Hunter once again calling himself the Game.
I am the game!
And there's no reason to believe that anything's wrong here. Nothing's out of the ordinary, everything's standard. On the August 2nd episode of Raw the following week, Austin was cutting a promo on Triple H, but he was interrupted by the Unholy Alliance, The Big Show and The Undertaker. The Dead Man asked for his WWF title rematch before he and The Big Show laid a beating into Steve Austin. Stone Cold granted The Undertaker a title shot later in the evening as Triple H was walking into the building, and when Hunter found out that The Undertaker was jumping the line, the Game was extremely pissed off. Triple H made sure the Raw main event didn't happen, interrupting the festivities here, which led to a giant brawl to end Monday Night Raw. So you maybe would have guessed that SummerSlam's main event would now be a triple threat match with Steve Austin facing Triple H and The Undertaker. Well, things got even more complicated the following week. Austin, The Undertaker and Triple H are booked into a main event triple threat match. Shawn Michaels shows up and Commissioner Michaels finds Steve Austin laid out backstage. Shawn thinks Hunter has attacked Austin, so HBK goes to the ring and announces that Chyna will take Steve Austin's place in the triple threat match. And the triple threat match is now for the number one contendership. When Triple H said that Chyna is just a woman and she could get hurt, Chyna told Hunter she's taking the opportunity presented by the Commissioner. Chyna went on to win the match after getting some help from Steve Austin, and so this episode of Raw went off the air with the viewing audience believing that Chyna would be main eventing SummerSlam against the Texas Rattlesnake. Keep in mind, we're only 2 weeks away from SummerSlam. The next week then, the August 25th episode of Raw, 1 week before SummerSlam, and we have even more confusion. Try to follow along here. Jim Ross announces at the top of the show that SummerSlam will now be the battle of the sexes, Chyna versus Steve Austin for the WWF Championship. Hunter and Chyna have an in-ring segment where the Game tries to sweet-talk Chyna into handing over the number one contendership, reminding Chyna that he has given her a lot over the years and now was the time for Chyna to give back. Chyna refuses and Hunter gets hot. Hunter reminds Chyna that it was he who brought Chyna into the World Wrestling Federation and made her a star, eventually provoking Chyna into giving him the match for the number one contendership. Chyna again wins the match, beating Triple H here after Mick Foley made his return, hitting Triple H with the steel steps and allowing Chyna to get the win. Remember, Hunter had used his sledgehammer to take out Mankind around 3 months prior. After the match, Mick Foley then asks Chyna for a match for the number one contendership. I mean, hasn't she already proved herself here? Pinning Triple H 2 weeks in a row should be enough to stamp a one-way ticket to the SummerSlam main event, but apparently not. Chyna low blows Mankind and says no deal. Commissioner Shawn Michaels then comes out saying he has a soft spot for Mankind and therefore Chyna has to wrestle once again, putting her SummerSlam title match up for grabs against Mankind. Mankind pins Chyna later in the evening, so poor Chyna has lost her SummerSlam match and Mick Foley is now going to face Steve Austin at the biggest show of the summer. Triple H hits the ring and a fight breaks out between Mankind and Hunter, and as the Game and the Ninth Wonder of the World make their way back up the ramp, Shane McMahon comes out and the Boy Wonder makes yet another number one contendership match. This time it's Mankind versus Triple H. Shawn Michaels and Shane McMahon end up refereeing the match. Hunter backdrops Mankind onto a steel chair. Both men cover each other at the same time. 1, 2, 3, we have a tie. Both Mankind and Hunter are named the number one contenders, and so our SummerSlam main event is set in stone. WWF Champion Steve Austin will defend the title against Mankind and Triple H in a triple threat match. What a complete mess this episode of Raw was, and remember, this was the Raw right before SummerSlam. So at the pay-per-view, Mankind wins the WWF Championship, which is completely baffling after all this hype that Triple H had received in the run-up to SummerSlam. The very next night on Raw, Triple H beats Mankind for the WWF Championship. So yeah, it definitely seems like something wasn't right here, and the obvious conclusion is that Steve Austin had refused to drop the title to Triple H. The Chyna stuff is interesting. I'm not sure why people think Steve Austin would drop the title to Chyna and not Triple H, but anyway, way, it's always possible that she was in consideration for the SummerSlam main event, and judging by the way things played out, at one point it was going to happen. I don't for a single minute think that this booking disaster was the World Wrestling Federation's plan all along. It was an absolute mess, and it definitely seems like plans were changing every 5 minutes. You just knew Triple H was getting the belt eventually, with all the promos, the change in attitude, and the push he was getting was inevitably going to lead to the WWF Championship. The story would end with Hunter as champion. That was never going to change. The booking around the SummerSlam 1999 main event though was so messed up that I don't think the WWF intentionally made things to play out like this, and that's why I go with the theory that Steve Austin refused to drop the title to Hunter. But then there's Triple H's DVD documentary, Thy Kingdom Come, and a little more light is shed on the situation. Now, it's a WWE DVD, take from this what you will, but Triple H said that Steve Austin hurt his knee and therefore Stone Cold felt that a triple threat match would be easier to work. That makes total sense. But still, Triple H said that Stone Cold said he would drop the title to Mankind and Hunter could win it the next night on Raw. So while Stone Cold was still refusing to drop the title to Triple H here, the reasoning behind the triple threat match is given a little more credence here. Triple H said, "It was what it was. I took it the next night on Raw. At the end of the day, more people saw it, I guess, and it all worked out great in the end." People can look at the title and people can look at title runs. At the end of the day, do you really beat anybody for a title? No, but there is the handing of the ball. And so, even with this rocky path that was taken, Triple H had become the WWF champion for the very first time. It seems like leaving D-Generation X behind was the right move in terms of Hunter's position on the WWF cards. Hunter had gone from the fun-loving degenerate to the game, wanting to prove that he was that damn good in every match that he competed in while moulding this new character for himself. Hunter would go on to become a mainstay in the WWF and WWE main event scene, and as mentioned at the top of this video, we can all critique Helmsley and his family ties to the WWF, but with a total of 9 WWE Championship reigns and 5 World Heavyweight Championship reigns, along with an additional list of accolades that's too long to talk about, if you switch off Triple H's personal business and look at his body of work in the ring, it's hard not to be impressed. I likely get downvoted into oblivion for saying this, but I'm a Triple H fan. I enjoy his work as a heel, and he's took part in some of my favourite wrestling matches of all time. I also think the character of the game was excellent, and nobody could have pulled it off the same way that Triple H did. Looking back at how the big singles push started was a lot of fun for me, and I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, looking at how one of wrestling's most decorated stars became the game, all before his marriage, by the way. Thanks very much for watching. The Triple H vs Mick Foley rivalry was a feud that spanned multiple years and a feud that was extremely beneficial to both men involved. While it's true that the Mankind character had been featured in a WWF main event on pay-per-view before this rivalry, it's also true that Mick Foley was still trying to solidify his place in the World Wrestling Federation, as Triple H was trying to do the exact same thing. The Foley vs Helmsley feud began in 1997, where the landscape of the World Wrestling Federation would go through drastic changes. And through this rivalry, both Mick Foley and Hunter Hearst Helmsley would go through changes of their own that drastically improved their position in the company. Helmsley owes a lot to Mankind, and really, Triple H helped fans see another side of Mick Foley. The Mankind character at one point had no redeeming qualities whatsoever, but fans would develop sympathy for Mrs. Foley's baby boy, and it all happened during this feud with Triple H. Sure, people will point to Foley's sit-down interview with Jim Ross as the true catalyst for fans getting behind Mick Foley, but that's just one part of the puzzle. Foley still needed a dance partner in the ring to effectively turn babyface, and well, Triple H was the perfect partner. So today we're going to look at some of the key moments from the Triple H vs Mick Foley rivalry, a rivalry that elevated both superstars and a rivalry that featured some extremely good matches. Weeks before the 1997 King of the Ring, the WWF aired some interviews with Mick Foley where a more human side to the wrestler was shown. The Mankind character had been portrayed as a deranged and lost individual with no remorse for his opponents, but during these interviews, a softer side to Mankind was shown. While still remaining in character, Foley talked about his struggles as a kid and his struggles growing up, and how he wanted to gain acceptance through becoming a wrestler. Foley said he dreamed of being a guy like Shawn Michaels, a successful superstar who had the affection of female fans across the world. And to demonstrate this, a home video was shown where Mick Foley portrayed the Dude Love character in 1983. During the video, Dude Love jumps off the roof of his friend's house, proving that Mick would go through ridiculous lengths to gain some sort of acceptance. Mick said that things didn't work out for Dude Love, nature didn't cooperate with Mrs. Foley's baby boy, and so Dude Love was replaced by Cactus Jack, a brutal character who didn't care about how he looked or how he came across to fans. Cactus Jack was a brutal hardcore wrestler who would put his body through immense pain in order to win matches. Through the mutilation of his own body, Mick Foley found dignity. Fans respected Cactus Jack and what he would do inside the ring. Foley didn't need to be Shawn Michaels, he found his niche through hardcore wrestling. But when Mankind showed up in the World Wrestling Federation, Foley said he lost the respect of fans, and Foley got upset because Vince McMahon didn't hire him when he was young, something that could have saved him from destroying his own body and his own mind. In a nutshell, this all added a serious amount of humanity to Mankind, even though it ended with Jim Ross taking the mandible claw. And through these interviews, fans who didn't know the history of Mick Foley found a new respect for the wrestler. They now understood some of his very real struggles, and instead of seeing Mankind as just another dark wrestling character, fans started seeing Mick Foley as a human being, a troubled man who just wanted some sort of acceptance. On the flip side of this, the character of Hunter Hearst Helmsley did not care about fans accepting him. Hunter had portrayed the Greenwich Blue Blood character since debuting in the World Wrestling Federation, and just like the early versions of Mankind, the Helmsley gimmick had absolutely no redeeming qualities. Paul Levesque was friends with Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall and Sean Waltman, and these group of individuals had a lot of backstage stroke within the World Wrestling Federation. When the infamous curtain call incident took place, Helmsley was the only man who got punished. Hunter was supposed to win the 1996 King of the Ring, but that big victory was taken away from him and Triple H would instead have to work lower on the cards in order to redeem himself. Triple H said that 1996 felt like an entire lifetime, but he got through it and he was back on the right path as we went into 1997. The Blue Blood character though had maybe gone as far as it could, and Triple H would need to evolve in order to stay relevant, and he achieved this by doing two things. First, he added Chyna as his heater or his bodyguard, and Chyna was so unique that people had no choice but to pay attention when she and Hunter walked into arenas across the states. And secondly, Triple H would become much more vicious inside the ropes. Hunter would slowly become a much more violent superstar, and the man who helped Triple H each step of the way
was Mick Foley, and I really mean each step of the way. You'll notice that these Foley versus Triple H matches become increasingly more violent as the months and the years go on, and really Triple H has a lot to thank Foley for when it comes to Hunter becoming the game. At the same time though, Hunter was the perfect opponent for a guy who wanted to garner sympathy. You had Triple H becoming more systematically aggressive, while we also had Mick Foley becoming more human. So really, Triple H versus Mick Foley in 1997 made a lot of sense. Add in the obvious fact that Mankind would take an absolute beating in order to make his opponents look good, and well, you have a match made in heaven really. Triple H met Mick Foley in the King of the Ring finals in 1997, and many fans felt that Foley was winning this one. Those sit-down interviews with Jim Ross had been airing on TV, so many people thought the WWF were giving the Mankind character a push. But what we ended up getting instead was one of the first showings of this more aggressive Triple H. Hunter and China destroyed Mick Foley in the 1997 King of the Ring finals, and from a storyline perspective, it was absolutely the right thing to do, in my opinion anyway. If the WWF wanted to continue gaining sympathy for Mankind, and if the WWF wanted Triple H to slowly move away from the over-exaggerated blue blood stuff, then having Hunter decimate Foley while the odds were stacked against Mick just made sense. It's easy to say Foley was more popular and therefore he should have won the King of the Ring, but it's a marathon here, not a sprint. And remember that Foley would still reach the very top of the WWF ladder well before Triple H. All in all though, the 1997 King of the Ring final is a good match that done what it was supposed to do from a character standpoint, and just to drive home the fact that Hunter couldn't care less about Mick Foley, Triple H attacked his opponent after the match. This finish meant that the Triple H versus Mankind feud would continue, and we'd see the match at the next two pay-per-views, Canadian Stampede and SummerSlam 1997. The night after the King of the Ring though, Triple H delivered a promo that really was a precursor to his famous My Time interview, and this has seemingly been totally forgotten these days. Hunter tells Vince McMahon that it was Vince's politics that resulted in Hunter missing out on last year's King of the Ring finals, and instead of saying it's my time, Triple H says it's my turn. Hunter was pulling the curtain back a little here, so to speak, and this added a little more realism to what was going on in the career of Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Foley appears on the big screen and Foley wants a rematch. Hunter says he enjoyed everything he done to Foley in the King of the Ring finals, but Mick doesn't deserve a rematch. After being taunted by China, Mankind made his way to the ring and Triple H again destroyed Mick. Hunter left his crown in the ring and Mankind put it on his head. The rematch was booked then for the Canadian Stampede show in July of 1997, but the finish of this one would be very inconclusive. The Canadian Stampede match opened up the pay-per-view, but these two would beat each other up throughout the entire show. A very physical match here would lead to both men getting counted out, but they were far from done. Mankind and Helmsley fought through the crowd at the end of the match, but a little later on, the two men started brawling again just before the featured light heavyweight match. Again, a little later in the show, the two men could be seen fighting in the parking lot, and this is interesting because Triple H had never really been involved in such confrontations before. Foley had experience in boiler room brawls and similar matches in the World Wrestling Federation, but this was one of the first times that Triple H really got his hands dirty outside the ring, and it was good to see. The blue blood stuff was starting to grow a little tiresome. The week after Canadian Stampede, Mick Foley's Dude Love character made his debut when Foley won the tag team titles with Stone Cold Steve Austin. The whole Three Faces of Foley stuff will get covered in a future video, but it's important that we look at Foley's alter egos because one of these is extremely important when considering the Mick Foley versus Triple H rivalry. So Dude Love was now a WWF superstar, but Mick would revert back to Mankind in order to face Triple H in a steel cage match at SummerSlam 1997. These two needed to be contained inside the classic big blue cage, and China also needed to be kept away from Mick Foley, but the cage didn't stop the Ninth Wonder of the World from getting involved. This was a very exciting match and the audience loved every moment of it, but what everyone remembers from this SummerSlam encounter was Mick Foley jumping from the top of the cage. Foley had the match won, but Mick stopped climbing down and he threw away his Mankind mask. Foley then climbed back up the cage and he ripped his shirt to reveal his old Cactus Jack singlet. And then, in a moment that harkened back to Mick Foley seeing Jimmy Snuka in Madison Square Garden, Mick delivered a diving elbow drop to Helmsley. The crowd went absolutely crazy as Mankind morphed into Cactus Jack for just a brief moment, and Foley was able to win the match afterwards while wearing a huge smile across his face. Mick had finally defeated Triple H on pay-per-view, but really, things were just getting started. Shortly after the steel cage match, Triple H's friendship with Shawn Michaels was brought to the ring when the genesis of D-Generation X began unfolding before our very eyes. It all started when Hunter teamed up with Shawn to face Mankind and his unlikely tag partner, The Undertaker. This match happened on the August 18th episode of Raw, and it's important to bring this up because Hunter's on-screen relationship with Shawn Michaels would shape the remainder of his career. Shawn's heel turn was completed on this evening when he attacked The Undertaker with a steel chair, and this resulted in Foley and Taker scoring a DQ win. But really, that doesn't matter. The character of Triple H would now go through even more changes as he became a member of D-Generation X, one of the WWF's most influential and noteworthy factions of all time. The following month, on the September 22nd episode of Raw, Triple H was booked into a Falls Count Anywhere match with Foley, and it's on this very episode of Raw that Cactus Jack made his return to wrestling. Dude Love and Mankind appeared on the Titantron, with both characters saying that a Falls Count Anywhere match really wasn't their thing, but Mankind knows a guy who would love to face Triple H in such a match type, and that was Cactus Jack. Jack and Hunter go on to have a really fun yet physical encounter that was filled with big bumps, and the match ended when Jack hits Hunter with a pile driver through a table. Cactus Jack, Dude Love and Mankind were all active WWF characters, and Triple H was getting prepared for the biggest push of his career. So now we skip forward to 1999, just after WrestleMania 15. Triple H has had his run with DX and he's now part of the corporation, and Mick Foley had won and lost the WWF Championship during his rivalry with The Rock. What we're going to do here is briefly mention the lesser known Triple H vs Mankind matches that took place on TV, and really I'm doing this to give you an outline of the whole rivalry. The journey to Hell in a Cell means a whole lot more when you see how both men got there. Mankind is scheduled to take on the Big Show at Backlash in a boiler room brawl, and just to soften Mick Foley up a little before Backlash, Triple H gets booked into a match with Mankind on the 19th of April episode of Raw is War. Keep in mind that the Big Show's association with the corporation had ended by this point. The Mankind character was now drastically different than before. He was still a little deranged, but really, Mankind was now used to show off Mick Foley's comedic skills more than anything else. Just like their previous matches, Chyna would be a huge factor here, and the match ends with Chyna hitting a low blow, which results in a DQ win for Foley. The corporation then attacked Foley after the bout, but the Big Show came to Mankind's aid. Foley appreciated the help, but Mankind was still going to bring the fight during the boiler room brawl. Mankind would end up winning his match here at Backlash, by the way. The following month, Mankind again faced Triple H on Raw, only this time, Mankind was now in the Union stable while Hunter was still involved with the corporation. This one stemmed from problems at the Over the Edge pay-per-view where Triple H attacked The Rock and Mankind with a lead pipe. Mankind said he does not enjoy a pipe job, so he wants an ODQ match against Triple H on Raw. Plus, Mankind said that Chyna was checking him out earlier in the shower, and that's good enough reason to face Triple H in another brutal match. Again, it's all about the numbers game. Chyna made sure Triple H won by injecting herself into the match. Triple H ends up hitting Mankind with his sledgehammer to win the bout, and afterwards, The Rock has to save Mankind from taking more punishment. We then reached the absolute fucking mess that was the SummerSlam 1999 main event, and going through all this requires a lot of notes. I've talked about this previously, but let's quickly go through it again. Steve Austin is our WWF champion, and Chyna is our number one contender. Chyna and Triple H have a match for the number one contendership, and Mick Foley gets involved, ensuring that Triple H gets defeated. Mankind then asks Chyna for a number one contendership match, but Chyna refuses, deciding to hit Mankind with a low blow instead. Commissioner Shawn Michaels then overrules Chyna, and another number one contendership match gets booked for some reason, and Mankind ends up beating Chyna with the mandible claw. So, Shawn Michaels comes out and he announces that Foley is our number one contender. Only then Shane McMahon comes out and he says there's a big conspiracy here that's stopping Triple H from main eventing SummerSlam. And keep in mind that all this is happening on the same episode of Raw. This leads to another number one contendership match, Triple H versus Mankind, so poor Chyna has been pretty much robbed of her main event spot at SummerSlam. We have Steve Austin on commentary, and Shane McMahon is our first referee and HBK is the second. Chyna again gets involved in the bout, but it wasn't enough to secure a decisive victory for the game. In the end, the match gets ruled as a draw when both men's shoulders get counted to the mat. It's then announced that because both men won the bout, Steve Austin will face Mankind and Triple H in the SummerSlam main event. It's been confirmed that Steve Austin didn't want to drop the title to Triple H, and this is why Mankind was added to the match. Mankind would end up winning the title at SummerSlam, but the very next night on Raw, Mankind dropped the title to Hunter. Triple H got his title shot by holding Jim Ross hostage inside the ring. Mick Foley agrees to put the title on the line, but Hunter still does some damage to good old JR. Thanks to Shane McMahon and Chyna, Triple H is able to defeat Mankind during the Raw main event. The game had now arrived, and the game was the new WWF champion. We have just one more TV match to look at before we reach our big main event, and this one took place on the September 23rd episode of SmackDown. Triple H lost his WWF title to Vince McMahon, of all people, the week prior, thanks to some help from Stone Cold Steve Austin. And if Triple H wants to get involved in the upcoming six-pack challenge at Unforgiven for the WWF title, then he's gonna have to run the gauntlet on SmackDown. Triple H must face the Big Show in a chokeslam match. He has to go to hell with Kane in an Inferno match. A casket match with The Undertaker would follow. Triple H would then step into Mankind's boiler room for a match against Mrs. Foley's baby boy. And then Triple H would main event SmackDown in a Brahma Bull Rope match with The Rock. If Triple H can win 3 of the 5 matches, he's in the six-pack challenge. Triple H won the Inferno match, the Boiler Room Brawl, and the Brahma Bull Rope match. The Undertaker was replaced by Mideon and Viscera during the casket match as The Undertaker needed time away from TV to heal some injuries. The Boiler Room Brawl with Mankind, though, was admittedly one of the weaker Boiler Room Brawls that the World Wrestling Federation ever produced. It was quite short at only 4.5 minutes long, and the match came to an end when someone used a metal pipe to push Mankind off a cabin when Foley was going for the elbow drop. We didn't see who used the metal pipe, but it would turn out to be the British Bulldog. Bulldog had just returned to the World Wrestling Federation, and he also helped Triple H win the final match of the gauntlet also. At the Unforgiven show then, Triple H would end up winning the WWF Championship once again. And this brings us to the 2000 Royal Rumble Street Fight, one of the absolute best matches of this rivalry, and for many, it doesn't get much better than this. The McMahon-Helmsley era is in full effect. Triple H and Stephanie are ruling the World Wrestling Federation with an iron fist, yet there's a group of unhappy superstars who stand up to this new regime. In late December of 1999, The Rock and Mankind were forced to face each other in a pink slip on a pole match. The loser of the match would get fired, and The Rock ended up winning this match. In the end though, the WWF roster along with The Rock came out of the ring and they demanded that Mick Foley got reinstated. If Foley didn't get his job back, then the rest of the locker room would walk out of the company. Triple H agreed to rehire Foley, and he also agreed to give Mankind a title shot at the Royal Rumble. The title match would quickly get turned into a street fight, but Mankind informed Hunter that he wasn't ready to face him in a street fight just yet before ripping off his shirt and mask. Mankind was maybe not ready, but Cactus Jack certainly was. The match would get billed as Triple H versus Cactus Jack. The two men would face each other one-on-one with the WWF title on the line, on pay-per-view for the very first time, and both competitors had come a real long way since their first meetings in 1997. It's a highly recommended street fight here in Madison Square Garden, and again, many consider this as the pinnacle of the Triple H versus Mick Foley rivalry. The two men would fight in the audience, they would fight on the entranceway, and Hunter got a real advantage when he managed to handcuff Jack towards the end of the match. The Rock and a police officer end up helping Mick Foley, and afterwards we see the thumbtacks. Foley takes a back body drop and a pedigree on the tacks, but Foley still kicks out, and Triple H ends up putting Cactus Jack away with a second brutal pedigree. Triple H got carried away on a stretcher after the bout, but Foley woke up and Hunter ended up getting hit with Mick's 2x4 wrapped in barbed wire. Madison Square Garden goes crazy for Foley as the pay-per-view continues. There was still another story to tell here, and it would get all wrapped up at No Way Out 2000. There's really only one way a rivalry like this could end: inside Hell in a Cell. Triple H granted Mick Foley a rematch at No Way Out, but there would be two stipulations. It would be inside Hell in a Cell, and if Foley lost, he would have to retire. There was no coming back as Dude Love or anything like that. Mick Foley would have to leave wrestling if he lost to the game at No Way Out. Steel chairs, a flaming 2x4 wrapped in barbed wire, steel steps, the cell itself. Absolutely nothing was off limits as Triple H and Mick Foley beat the hell out of each other. It's an absolute bloodbath at No Way Out, and it's also extremely entertaining. Keep in mind too that Foley absolutely believed that this was his last match. This was the final time that fans would see Mick Foley do his thing, and he sure did give fans something to remember inside Hell in a Cell. The two men would end up fighting on top of the structure, and the ring was gimmicked to take the impact of a falling Cactus Jack, not like the 1998 King of the Ring where Foley legitimately knocked himself out, taking the exact same move. And the game would end up hitting the pedigree to end the career of Mick Foley. Mick Foley wanted Cactus Jack to go out fighting though, and that mission was accomplished. Some of the bumps during this match are simply painful to watch, but this makes the whole main event extremely gripping and extremely exciting. It's a fantastic way to end this rivalry, and the end is quite emotional as Mick Foley looks out to the crowd before disappearing from the WWF. Only no, he wouldn't disappear just yet. Chris Jericho was supposed to main event WrestleMania 2000 in a fatal four-way battle of the McMahons, but Y2J hadn't impressed the WWF higher-ups. So Vince McMahon picked up the phone and Mick Foley was brought back for one more match. And if you ask me, which you didn't, but if you ask me, it was the wrong thing to do. Mick Foley ending his career inside Hell in a Cell with Triple H would have been a much better way to say goodbye. But anyway, Triple H versus The Rock versus The Big Show versus Mick Foley headlined WrestleMania, and so Mick had one more chance to get some revenge on the game. But in the end, Triple H retained the WWF title. From the disturbed and deranged Mankind character and from the Greenwich Blue Blood, all the way to Cactus Jack versus the game inside Hell in a Cell. Mick Foley and Triple H's rivalry carried both men to bigger and better things within the World Wrestling Federation, and as mentioned at the top of this video, the feud was nothing but beneficial for both men. Mankind and Hunter Hearst Helmsley had absolutely nothing in common, but as time went on, it became apparent that they actually did share something: the desire to beat the hell out of each other. Foley used Triple H to climb up the ladder the exact same way Triple H used Foley, and while other rivalries took place for both men during this 3-year time period, the two would always find their way back to each other, and it all ended in the most brutal and violent way possible. Would Mick Foley have become a main eventer without Triple H and vice versa? Yeah, probably, but I wouldn't have it any other way for both men really. This was one of the WWF's best feuds at the time, and it's a rivalry that I had a whole lot of fun revisiting for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.
It's our time now. Time to play the game. You're all done. Keep your finger off the switch. No, here comes trouble. I'm not gonna listen to anybody. Tell me who and what to be. I'm not trying to be like everybody. Time to play make believe. 'Cause I'm wrong time, wrong time.
Triple H has always been quite a polarizing wrestler. While many can appreciate Hunter's ability to draw heat, especially during the Attitude Era, his great mind for the business, his appreciation of wrestling history, and his ability to draw people in with a character that claims to be the King of Kings, others will bring up the infamous Reign of Terror, the rumoured politicking backstage, and his personal relationship with certain individuals, such as the Clique and the McMahon family. You'll never change anyone's mind about Triple H. Either you love him or you hate him. It feels like people will either talk about his work in the ring or his reported dealings outside of it and base an opinion on Paul Levesque using one or the other. But something fans can't deny is the fact that Triple H was a seriously determined performer. A guy who would just keep going, and a guy who, like it or not, was extremely devoted to the business. Hunter seemed to possess a by any means necessary attitude when it came to professional wrestling, and again, some are going to perceive that as Triple H being ruthless backstage, and others will see the determination through his actual in-ring career. But for me, one of Triple H's best attributes was his commitment to pro wrestling and the WWF, or WWE. That's not to say some of the more negative aspects of Triple H's career that gets brought up aren't without merit. Some of the reported stories surrounding Triple H can be quite eye-opening, and surely there's no smoke without fire. But the Game will always be one of my favourite heels in pro wrestling, and I think his career as a performer will only get more celebrated as time goes on. After leaving D-Generation X, Triple H put all his focus on being a bad guy. He knew Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock were going to sit at the top of the mountain as company babyfaces, and overthrowing those workers as the most popular guy in the business was going to be a near impossible task. So Triple H decided to become the biggest villain in the WWF and raise his spot in the company by wrestling guys like Austin and Rock. When Steve Austin decided to become a heel in 2001, he and Triple H formed a dominating tag team known as the Two-Man Power Trip, and things were going quite well for the Game and the Rattlesnake. But a career-threatening injury took Triple H completely out of the Game, and Hunter was forced to miss an important time period in the World Wrestling Federation, the Invasion angle. Hunter's return on the January 7th, 2002 episode of WWF Raw is the stuff of legend, and a fine example of how driven and determined Triple H truly was. The guy who worked so hard to become the company's top heel was embraced by Madison Square Garden, with many fans saying the return of Triple H in New York City was one of the greatest returns of all time. Today we'll look at the Game's comeback and what made it so good. Steve Austin teaming up with Triple H after WrestleMania 17 was very fascinating. Normally, you'd see two singles wrestlers with nothing to do getting forced together into a tag team to pretty much see what happens, but Hunter and Austin were top tier main event superstars who came together to form this dominating heel partnership. With both guys being headline acts and with both guys already having successful careers up to this point in 2001, the two-man power trip had some serious potential, and what we got on TV from a promo and in-ring standpoint was really good. There were multiple ways the team could go and there were multiple stories to tell, but the team's run never received a proper ending and we don't know how the story was supposed to truly end. Austin and Hunter faced Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho on the May 21st episode of Raw's War. Jericho had Austin locked in the walls of Jericho. Triple H runs over to break it up, but in doing so, Hunter tears his left quadriceps muscle. The muscle came completely off the bone. Hunter got up and finished the match, even taking the walls of Jericho himself on a table and standing up in the ring to deliver a sledgehammer shot, a shot that missed its target, but nonetheless, Hunter saw the match through before going backstage and getting instantly rushed out for an MRI. Dr. Andrews in Alabama said of the quad tear, "It was really torn uniquely, completely off the top of his kneecap. He stood up on it after it happened, which is impossible. I want to see the tape because I can't quite imagine him being able to do anything after rupturing his quadriceps." Modern wrestling has more safeguards in place where the company is supposed to stop wrestlers from continuing matches in the event of serious injury, and this is a good thing. No one wants to see someone getting legitimately hurt, and fans have rightfully called out companies when matches have continued on when clearly they should have been stopped. 20 years ago, it was a completely different story. There was a mentality that the show must go on, and Triple H even said in an interview that it was like a badge of courage to continue a match while hurt. Hunter said, "I don't know why we do what we do, I just know it never entered my mind to stop. I think most guys in our locker room would have done that. I think that's the way we all are. There's a pride in what we do of never stopping, of the show goes on, of continuing no matter what, and it's like your badge of courage." In a WWF.com interview with Hunter the day after the injury, Triple H said, "It's what I do. This business is your heart and soul. You give everything for it. And at that point, it wasn't about me, it wasn't about how I felt, it was about that match. I made the decision at that point to finish the match. I would have to be a lot more hurt than that to not continue." With this injury, Triple H would get put on the shelf for 8 months. The two-man power trip was no more, and Hunter would begin the rehabilitation process during a very important time in the World Wrestling Federation. Eight months is an extremely long time in professional wrestling, especially back in this era. The WWF announced the purchase of WCW 2 months before Triple H's injury, and the WWF were planning out an invasion storyline where the WWF would clash with WCW and ECW. The timing of Triple H's injury would mean the game would completely miss the invasion storyline, and many wonder what Hunter's role would be in the whole angle and how his heel character would fit into the babyface WWF team. There's always the possibility of Helmsley joining the Alliance too, or maybe Triple H's role would have been much more important due to his on-screen relationship with the McMahon family. Let's be honest, the whole invasion angle was another McMahon versus McMahon storyline at its very core, so it's interesting to speculate how Hunter would have fit into all this. Initially, Triple H thought he would have been back in the company much earlier. He was told he could be back within 3 to 5 months, with 3 months being a stretch. And Triple H, at first, described his injury as a bump in the road and not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But that all changed after Triple H's surgery and after Dr. Andrews noticed the extent of the injury. There was no way Hunter was going to make it back in time for the invasion with the quad tear being so bad. And Triple H made the decision to move to Alabama for the whole duration of his rehab. Triple H was desperate to get back in the ring, and if that meant living in a hotel for 8 months while going through 9 hours of rehab Monday to Friday with half days on Saturdays and Sundays, well, that's what Triple H would do. Determination, drive, and commitment. WWF Raw magazine got an interview with Hunter while he was in the middle of rehab. Triple H said, I kinda feel like a work release prisoner. I get up in the morning and I eat breakfast and I go to my job, which is rehab, and I'm there all day and somebody's there with me all day making me do stuff. I leave there, go to my hotel room and hang out, and if I have a good day, I get an hour to go to the gym. The rest of the time, I'm in my cell. Triple H wasn't seen on TV during the Invasion pay-per-view, but he was backstage for the event. WWF.com conducted another interview with Triple H at the show, and Hunter revealed more details about his surgery and his rehab. After the surgery, Hunter said he dropped 25 pounds. He said the mixture of heavy medication and bad hospital food were the cause of the weight loss, and he said it was going to take time to gain the weight back. The interviewer then brought up the fact that Hunter was also backstage at a few Raws before the Invasion pay-per-view, and Hunter revealed that his doctors had actually asked him to stop coming to shows. The travel was slowing down his recovery, and so Triple H would stop attending events immediately after Invasion. When asked if he was sick of rehab, Hunter said, "It's the kind of thing that you can't allow yourself to get sick of. Do I want to do it every day? Do I want to get stuck in Birmingham, Alabama and not on the road or be at home or be around my family? I'm sick of all that, but I'm not sick of the rehab because every day that I do rehab, I get a little better." Most people will remember the WWF airing videos showing Triple H in Alabama doing his workouts and rebuilding himself for the big comeback. One video in particular, the one with U2's Beautiful Day, always gets brought up, and this video itself I feel is quite important. This kind of video playing for a heel with such an optimistic song kinda steered Triple H into babyface territory, and it was totally intentional too. There's no way it couldn't have been. Earlier videos had Triple H talking about getting back in the ring and taking care of people that were talking bad about him behind his back, but the U2 video was definitely putting Triple H on the good guy path, and it did make fans quite excited for the big return. Triple H even spoke about this in the Raw magazine interview, saying, "The guess is that all of a sudden I'm going to come back and I'm going to be a huge babyface and I'm going to love the fans and all that stuff. I can guarantee you this, I will come back and I will not change. I'll be the exact same thing I was before. If people want to cheer that, they can. If people hate me, they can hate me. I'll come back and do exactly what I did before. While I'm doing that, hopefully I'm going to be able to give people performances better than anybody else. If that makes them cheer me, great. If they want to still hate me, that's fine too. I'm not looking to come back and do anything other than be 100% and be able to perform at the best of my ability." Initially, the WWF and Triple H believed that the game would make a comeback for the Vengeance pay-per-view in December of 2001. Hunter was even featured on the poster, but doctors told Triple H to take another few weeks off and the game missed the show. Instead, at Vengeance, Chris Jericho made history when he became the first ever WWF Undisputed Champion, and those two championship belts are what Triple H would aim for when making his big comeback. The WWF started airing promo videos for Triple H's return with the date being set in stone. WWF Raw, January 7th, 2002, Madison Square Garden. The company decided not to give Hunter a big storyline based build-up for his comeback. The heel Stephanie McMahon would make comments about her big bad husband coming back to the World Wrestling Federation, but the WWF felt there was no need to bring Hunter back with a big angle. The return was more than enough. Madison Square Garden and the New York audience could make or break moments like this, especially during this era. The WWF were rolling the dice a little by having this big comeback take place in the Garden, but Triple H nor the WWF needn't have worried. Hunter ended up getting the pop of his career when he stepped out into the arena. Hunter said in his Thy Kingdom Come documentary, "I remember standing at Gorilla and the video played, Triple H returns next. It felt like the longest commercial break of all time, but yet I was hoping it would last longer because of the anticipation of, am I going to hear crickets?" Not only do the fans go crazy when they hear Triple H's entrance music, but they pop again when Hunter walks out onto the stage. They then pop when Hunter gets all fired up before walking down the ramp, and they pop a third time when he spits the water. Jim Ross called it one of the loudest sustained roars he'd ever heard in the Garden, and the fans just don't let up. It's an amazing return, and in my opinion, it's one of the best Raw moments in history. Hunter admitted to getting a little emotional while standing in the ring. Any concerns he had about fans not caring about him were completely washed away, and Hunter said he had to take a moment to remember that he was supposed to be the ass kicker and he was supposed to be the game. He said he would have hated himself if he began shedding tears during the comeback, so he pulls himself together while the fans continue to chant his name. Hunter reintroduces himself as the game. He says the fans can bet their asses that he's back, and Triple H announces that he's going to take part in the 2002 Royal Rumble in just 2 weeks' time. Kurt Angle then shows up, saying he won an Olympic gold medal with a broken freaking neck, while Hunter had to take 8 months away due to a torn quad. So if anyone deserves some time in the Garden to speak to the fans, it's Kurt Angle. Kurt says he has a big announcement too, bigger than Triple H's return. Kurt says that he's also entering the Royal Rumble for the very first time in his career. Kurt says he didn't enter the Rumble last year because he was too busy pinning Triple H in the title match, and this leads to a big old fight breaking out. Triple H doesn't totally destroy Kurt. The game takes a German suplex from the Olympic gold medalist, but Hunter does get the upper hand, and the crowd again goes crazy when they see the pedigree. Hunter was in the best shape of his life too. Even the commentators mentioned that the game never looked better as he walked back up the rampway. Triple H was back. The MSG return went better than anyone could have hoped for, and it became a true highlight of Triple H's career. All the game had to do now was win the Royal Rumble. It was great. You know, it's hard to put into words the journey that I was on at this point in time, because there was a high probability that I would never wrestle again with the injury that I had, and they kind of let me know that. So coming back, having the return that I did, and having the opportunity to do that at Madison Square Garden, and the reaction and everything was incredible. But then, what do you do with that, and how do you capitalize on that? And that was the challenge. Triple H won the Royal Rumble in 2002. It was a good Royal Rumble match. Hunter came out while old partner Steve Austin waited in the ring, and we got to see the two-man power trip fight it out. And we also got some great comedy when the Hurricane came out and he tried to take out Austin and Hunter. But in the end, Stone Cold got eliminated by Kurt Angle, while Triple H eliminated Angle to win the match during the closing moments. Hunter was on his way to WrestleMania. A story would have to get built up around the main event, and this is when things begin to fall apart. There were rumours of Steve Austin versus Triple H being the initial plans for the WrestleMania main event, but because Austin didn't want to be a heel anymore, the plan was scrapped. Chris Jericho wrote in his book that people were lobbying for Kevin Nash to take the title away from Jericho on Raw, leading to a Nash versus Triple H match at WrestleMania, but Chris says it was Vince McMahon who wanted Triple H versus Jericho, and the match would go ahead following Jericho's title defense at No Way Out. But there were other problems surrounding the undisputed title match at WrestleMania 18. Chris wanted to do an angle where he and Stephanie McMahon would have an affair. This has been confirmed by Jericho, by the way, in interviews and in his second book. But according to Chris, Triple H shot it down because it made Hunter, as an upcoming champion, look stupid. And Hunter also said that Stephanie wouldn't cheat on him, so it wasn't very realistic. That, to me, is ridiculous. It's a storyline, it's characters playing a role. I think a fair amount of fans would understand that it's all an angle and it wasn't real, but Triple H didn't want to do the affair storyline, and so instead, undisputed champion Chris Jericho and Stephanie McMahon would become on-screen business associates, evolving into undisputed champion Chris Jericho kind of becoming Stephanie McMahon's lapdog. Stephanie had lied to Hunter about being pregnant before No Way Out, and Triple H left Stephanie at the altar when the two were gonna renew their wedding vows. Stephanie aligned herself with Hunter's No Way Out opponent Kurt Angle before switching over to Chris Jericho. It's just so clear to see that going into Mania, the storyline was Stephanie versus Hunter, not Jericho versus Hunter. In the Mania title match, and indeed the undisputed champion paid the price. The Rock versus Hulk Hogan was also going to happen at WrestleMania, and this is a match that shouldn't have been followed by anything. This should have closed the show. Triple H versus Chris Jericho was instead the final match of the evening. Jericho protested it, rightfully understanding that Hogan and Rock couldn't be followed, while Triple H, according to Jericho and former WWF referee Mike Chioda, still wanted the title match to close out WrestleMania 18. Just a quick side note too, the Women's Championship match between Lita, Trish and Jazz was placed in between Hogan vs Rock and Jericho vs Triple H, but it didn't make any difference at all. Then there's also the off-the-record interview, which I feel has been taken out of context by wrestling websites. This is one you need to see for yourself. Host Michael Landsberg says that Chris Jericho is the company's champion, but he doesn't feel like Chris is the WWF's ultimate superstar. And Landsberg asks Triple H why this is the case and what does Chris have to do to become a bigger headline act. Hunter says he thinks Chris is just a step below the top tier. He's not sure why, but there's a small piece of the puzzle that's maybe missing, but Chris is gonna find it. Hunter says it can take a few shots to get it right. Hunter himself says his career was a slow simmer just like Chris's, but Jericho's career will begin boiling very soon. Now, I don't think anything Hunter said here was wrong. Chris was the undisputed champion, but he certainly hadn't reached heights comparable to other headliners in the company at that time. I do agree that Hunter could have maybe avoided the question or answered in a different way, and I'm sure people will see this as me defending Triple H when he should have been doing everything he could to put his opponent over. I agree that he definitely should have done that, but I don't think he put Jericho down and wrote Y2J off as a disappointment as written in a What Culture article. Watching the interview back, there's nothing Triple H said here that wasn't true. He was right. Jericho wasn't where others were in the company at the time of WrestleMania 18, and Jericho's career would get elevated to the next level in the future. Still, whatever way you look at it, it's hard to argue that the main event wasn't kind of downplayed through the interview. I just don't think it's half as bad as what others make it out to be. In the end, Jericho vs Hunter main evented WrestleMania, and it was, without a doubt, the wrong move. Fans were completely spent after seeing Rock vs Hogan. There wasn't a match on the card that could re-energise fans after seeing history being made with the Great One and the Hulkster. And so the undisputed title match played out in front of a tired audience who just couldn't get into the bout. It's a shame too, because Y2J vs The Game at Mania isn't bad at all from an in-ring perspective. They have a good match. But even when you watch the show back today, it's hard to stick around for the main event after watching Hogan and Rock. The best way to describe Triple H vs Jericho is forgettable. It should have been so much more. Stephanie takes a pedigree, Jericho takes a pedigree, and the show ends with Triple H holding both the World Championship and the WWF Championship. I think it's fair to say that after the amazing Madison Square Garden comeback, Hunter's big WrestleMania main event singles match was a disappointment. And you could put that down to the match placement on the card and the lack of a true personal rivalry between Chris and Hunter, instead of the Stephanie versus Hunter stuff the WWF were so hell-bent on showcasing. It's a case of Triple H's real relationship with the McMahons actually being a detriment. I know there'll be viewers out there who thought the match was amazing, there always is, and it can be also said that the match was destined to fail before it even got in the ring. But these problems were also self-inflicted in a way. There could have been a better storyline going into the match, such as the one pitched by Chris Jericho, and the match could have been moved to the semi-main spot if Hunter would have pushed for it. Hunter was asked by WWF.com if he would have minded if his match went on before Rock and Hogan, and Triple H said, "I wouldn't have minded, and I don't think Chris Jericho would have minded either, but I don't think it's fair to the World Wrestling Federation Championship. I don't think it would be fair to every single person who held the title before us, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be fair to anybody, from Shawn Michaels to Bret Hart to Hulk Hogan to the Ultimate Warrior to Bruno Sammartino to every single guy who ever held that title and made that title mean what it does. Every single person who has ever held it or had any desire to hold it. If that match would have been behind something else, I think it would have taken away from what that title means. And then I think that would have been unfair to what everybody bled and sweat for." Kinda feels like I'm leaving this video in quite a negative light, but the comeback of Triple H in 2002 was still a true highlight of the game's career. And if you enjoy watching big returns and big crowd pops, Triple H on the 7th of January 2002 episode of Raw is hard to beat. It's always great going back and watching it again. It shows us the fan loyalty that the World Wrestling Federation once possessed and the respect fans had for performers, no matter if the superstar in question was a good guy or a bad guy. A few quotes from this video were taken from old 2001 and 2002 WWF.com articles, and reading those in their entirety shows us how intense and grueling Triple H's rehabilitation truly was. Moving yourself away from home to dedicate 2/3 of a year to non-stop physical therapy sounds like a nightmare, but that's what Hunter did, and in the end, even with the dodgy Mania main event, the end goal was reached. Hunter became the top dog once again, and he became the undisputed champion. Hunter's role in the Invasion storyline is a big what if. It's a shame he wasn't involved in the angle, and I'll always be curious about how he would have fit in. But Hunter came back stronger than ever and the fans embraced him. Hunter would drop the belt to Hollywood Hogan the following month, and by the time the summer of 2002 came around, Hunter reverted back to his heel character in order to face his old buddy, the returning Shawn Michaels. Needless to say, it was the right move at the time. But that'll do it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching and take care.
Holler if you hear me.
1, 2, is this on?
Tell me who and what to be. Not trying to be like everybody. Time to play like a league.
When it was announced that Scotty Steiner had once again signed with the WWE in 2002, a lot of fans got very excited. The Scott Steiner that left the WWF all the way back in 1994 was very different to the Scott Steiner who was coming back. He had a drastic new look, a very outspoken attitude, and a ton more success as a singles competitor. The WWE weren't getting the All-American from the University of Michigan. They were going to get the big bad booty daddy who was obsessed with his freaks and his peaks. He should have fit right in like a glove. Scott's televised return match took place at the 2003 Royal Rumble. He would face World Heavyweight Champion Triple H, and a rematch was booked the following month for the No Way Out pay-per-view. Both matches were poorly received, and Steiner went from main eventing 2 pay-per-views in a row to being completely left off the WrestleMania card the following month. Loads of theories have been thrown out about the Triple H matches, and it doesn't take a hardcore fan to guess which one is most prevalent. This all happened during the well-documented reign of terror after all. But what we'll do in this video is check out Steiner's debut, the build-up towards both Triple H matches, and then we'll look at the reports and theories about exactly what happened and why Steiner's push got completely stopped following his rivalry with the Game. The Steiner vs Triple H Royal Rumble match has been labelled as one of the worst WWE main events of the era, and so let's go back and take a proper close look at both matches and see if they truly deserve the reputation they get online. Okay, let's look at everything that happened on TV first of all. Scott Steiner made his WWE return at the 2002 Survivor Series event held in Madison Square Garden. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, as the song goes, and the New York audience popped huge for Scott when he got in the ring and he took out Matt Hardy and Chris Nowinski, 2 guys who were ripping the fans inside the Garden. So far, so good. In researching today's topic, I found an insane amount of news outlets and websites ripping into Steiner and how he shouldn't have bothered making this comeback. But if you take 2 minutes to watch his return, you'll quickly realise that fans wanted to see him. The reaction he got inside the Garden was absolutely incredible. The WWE done well here in creating excitement around Steiner's return, and fans who knew of his antics during the later WCW days were curious to see how this would all play out. There was a problem though, and it was a problem the WWE were fully aware of. Scott Steiner was dealing with injuries, but we'll talk about this later on. Because Steiner wasn't 100%, he would be kept away from in-ring action. Steiner returned at Survivor Series on the 17th of November 2002, and it took just under a month before he started working house show matches. It wasn't until 2 months after Survivor Series where the WWE felt comfortable putting him in a televised wrestling match. That's not to say that Steiner didn't get physical though. Steiner established himself as a babyface by taking out different bad guys, But this was always done in short bursts, which made sense by the way. To keep Steiner at the forefront while keeping him out of the ring, a storyline played out where the Raw and SmackDown general managers, Eric Bischoff and Stephanie McMahon, would try to sign Scott to their respective brand. Stephanie offered Scott a very special signing bonus if he joined SmackDown, and Scott wanted to benefit from that bonus inside a wrestling ring in front of all his freaks while the cameras were still rolling. Stephanie, of course, declined, and Scott said Little Miss McMahon was nothing but a tease. This ultimately led to Steiner joining the Raw brand, and on the very next episode of Monday Night Raw, the December 16th episode, Scott Steiner would confront the World Heavyweight Champion Triple H. Triple H lost the World Heavyweight Championship at Survivor Series 2002, the same show where Scott made his return. Hunter lost the championship to Shawn Michaels in the first ever Elimination Chamber match, but he quickly regained the belt at the following pay-per-view, Armageddon. As HBK's immediate WWE future was uncertain, it was decided that Triple H would move into a feud with Scotty Steiner, with the plan being a reported match trilogy, a Royal Rumble match, a No Way Out match, and finally there would be a match at WrestleMania 19 between The Game and Big Papa Pump. Again, this was reported and rumoured, so take it with a grain of salt, but with the way things played out and with how short the Booker T versus Triple H build was towards Mania, you could easily believe that Steiner versus Triple H was the initial plan. Booker T getting a title shot seemed like it came from nowhere. On the Raw following Armageddon, Triple H was scheduled to have an in-ring celebration, but Eric Bischoff tried to sway Hunter into having the celebration early. Chief Morley had promised Scott Steiner that he'd have the main event spot on Raw, and so Bischoff had a problem. Triple H said Scott Steiner is nothing but a jacked up piece of trash who couldn't hold the game's jock on his best day. Hunter said if he doesn't get the last spot on Raw, then he's gonna, quote, pull a Stone Cold Steve Austin and walk out of the WWE. Chief Morley would ask Scott to wait until next week. Steiner agreed, but of course Big Papa Pump interrupted the celebration. Steiner told Triple H that the game can't beat Freakzilla, and Steiner reminded Eric Bischoff that his contract states he's owed a title shot, and if he doesn't get that shot, he's gonna leave. Hunter says he knows where Scott came from and he knows how they done business down there, but in WWE, you have to earn title shots, and in the eyes of Triple H, Steiner hasn't earned anything. After pretty much telling Triple H that he has no balls, Hunter agrees to the title match while telling Scott it's your funeral. Maybe no truer words have ever been spoken. Hunter says Steiner was a big fish in a small pond, but signing this match means Steiner is jumping into the ocean where Triple H is the biggest shark of them all. Great line. And Hunter plans on eating Steiner up. The match is going to happen at the Royal Rumble, but Steiner wanted to fight on Raw, and after a stare down that got the Orlando audience going nuts, Triple H backed down. Again, so far so good. Steiner would trip over his words every now and then during promos, but by and large, things were going well here. There was anticipation for Steiner's return match. So, the WWE still felt Steiner wasn't ready to compete on television, yet they still booked him in a world title match. They'd need to build this up without Steiner stepping into the ring for a proper bout. So we had a few little competitions between Triple H and Scotty Steiner. Some say that this was silly, some say it killed any heat Steiner and Triple H had, and some would say the weeks leading up to the Royal Rumble were just as bad as the Rumble match itself. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think there were better ways to reach the destination here. Arm wrestling contests and pose downs had happened on WWE or WWF television before, and some of these moments were quite memorable, but yeah, I wasn't a fan of this stuff in the run-up to Steiner's return match, only because I feel it could have been done better. Some of it still was entertaining though. An arm wrestling competition happened on the 23rd of December 2002 episode of Raw, and Steiner beat Triple H. I like how Triple H seemed to convulse in the middle of the contest, and I like how Steiner beat Hunter multiple times afterwards. I don't think it's half as bad as what others make it out to be. WWE Raw took a break the following week for New Year, and then on the 6th of January 2003 episode, we had the pose down. Triple H paid off a bunch of judges to unanimously vote in his favour after he and Steiner flexed in the middle of the ring. 3 different poses happened and the fans popped for Steiner every time. Triple H got some bronzer in his eye and he spent the remainder of the promo with a stream of water gushing from it. Hunter said that seeing as bodybuilding is subjective, he'll give Steiner another chance, a push-up contest. In the middle of the push-ups, the judges began attacking Steiner. Steiner cleans house while Triple H escapes up the entranceway. While the arm wrestling competition wasn't bad, this seemed to go on way too long. The week after that, 6 days before the Royal Rumble, Steiner challenged Triple H to a bench press competition, but Triple H refused. The two men ended up having a fight inside the ring instead, where Triple H got stripped down and Scotty Steiner got the upper hand. As you can probably tell, the build wasn't great, but there has been worse. Okay, let's look at the Royal Rumble match, a match that many call one of the worst main events in Royal Rumble history. It starts off with Hunter gaining the upper hand. The two men end up in the corner and Steiner turns it around quite quickly. There's some hard chops here and big clubbing blows to the back. Over and over again, Steiner throws down hard forearms and you can see Triple H's shoulders are already lit up. Hunter then takes a press slam, he rolls out of the ring and Scott greets him with a clothesline. Triple H then gets rammed into the ring post before Scott brings his opponent back into the ring with a suplex. And then a Steiner sucks chant breaks out in the arena. Up to this point, Steiner had done nothing wrong, and it's a bit perplexing why the audience would turn on him so quickly. New York went crazy for Steiner's return. Scott had gotten great ovations during the questionable contests and competitions he and Triple H took part in on Raw, but the Boston audience here at the Rumble seemed to have absolutely no time for Scott Steiner. If they would have held out for 5 minutes, then yes, you'd see why the fans were unhappy with what they were seeing. Steiner wasn't performing many wrestling moves here, it's all strikes, chops, shots to the lower back, stuff like that. He does perform a Boston Crab, but the crowd remains quite hostile. Once both men get back up, the audience cheers for a Triple H facebuster and they boo when Scott no-sells it. Steiner then applies a bear hug, which was another bad call, seeing his fans were quickly losing interest here. But the competitors kinda get the crowd back after Steiner pulls off an overhead belly-to-belly suplex, the first of this match. The biggest pop so far comes when Triple H gets a boot up in the corner and Steiner almost gets his head taken off. It's very interesting seeing fans cheer for Triple H here, especially during this time period. On the outside of the ring, Steiner gets launched into the ring steps where he takes a bit of a clumsy looking bump, and back inside the ring, Hunter hits Scott with a neck breaker and the crowd pops again when Ric Flair begins choking Steiner behind the referee's back. Another neckbreaker from Triple H, another cheap shot from Flair. Hunter then tries to end it with a pedigree, but Scott counters with a slingshot. You can see Scott was sucking wind during the setup, by the way. Steiner then lands an exploder suplex, but he falls to the mat afterwards. I want to say this was Steiner selling, but I'm not too sure either. He definitely looks blown up, and we haven't even made it to the 10-minute mark. Steiner had Hunter lifted up, but the game counters and he pulls off neckbreaker number 3. This one looked a bit awkward, but I don't totally blame Steiner here either. Triple H was pretty much in the cutter position for this one, and there was nothing Steiner could do except fall flat on his front or turn awkwardly for the called neckbreaker. Steiner went with the latter. Triple H performs a suplex before trying an aerial attack. Steiner grabs him and it's another belly-to-belly suplex. A few clotheslines from Steiner follows, we get even more belly-to-belly suplexes, and the crowd are now flat out booing the match. The next suplex is enough to make fans completely give up. Incredibly, Steiner decides to perform another suplex, and we can make the comparison here to Brock Lesnar, but the difference here is that the whole Lesnar Suplex City thing was a gimmick for a while, and Paul Heyman made it work by counting along. It won matches, but here at the Royal Rumble, fans weren't expecting to see the same move over and over again from a returning superstar, and so it felt like Steiner really had nothing else to offer. It gets worse though. Steiner goes for his double underhook powerbomb, a move he's pulled off countless times, but he falls over and the move gets completely botched. That's it, done with now. They completely lost the audience here. The booing is so loud inside the arena. Steiner then pulls off a superplex, and after kicking out at 2, Triple H decides to leave the ring and head back up the rampway. Fans are booing this, but it's actually a good thing. It's wasting ring time and it's limiting any further physicality, thus reducing the chances of the match getting even worse. Eventually, Steiner follows Hunter and Flair up the entranceway, and a shot with the world title busts the champion wide open. The two then fight around the ring and in the audience, and when the action gets back inside the ropes, belly to belly suplex.
Hunter throws Earl Hebner out of the ring and the crowd finally makes some noise when Hebner makes a curious move and he refuses to disqualify Hunter. The referee wants Triple H to face his opponent tonight and the game isn't going to get an easy exit. And how does Scott capitalise on the crowd finally getting a little hot? Belly to belly suplex. Flair distracts the referee and Hunter hits a low blow. Steiner kicks out of the follow-up pin and Hunter decides enough's enough and he grabs his sledgehammer. After hitting Steiner with his favourite weapon, the referee calls for the bell, rendering the last little spot pointless where Hebner refused to DQ Hunter. And the whole thing gets wrapped up with Scott taking control of the sledgehammer, Hunter and Flair getting whacked, and Steiner performs the Steiner recliner as Eric Bischoff and officials plead for Big Papa Pump to stop. Steiner puts the world title over Triple H and the crowd boos again as he poses over the fallen champion. Does the Royal Rumble match deserve all the negative press it receives? I think it does. I want to make it clear too that I'm a big fan of both Rick and Scott Steiner and it feels pretty bad pointing out all these negative things that's wrong in a match, but there's no defending it either. Steiner vs Triple H completely stunk out the Boston Fleet Center and Steiner's big return match was a colossal failure. We're going to talk about the possible reasons why in a moment, but let's check out the rematch first of all before we dig into things like interviews and reports. It's incredible to think that someone thought a rematch was a good idea after what happened at the Royal Rumble, but let's see how the WWE built up the No Way Out match. Hunter bragged the next night on Raw about how he's still the world champion and Scotty Steiner interrupted the promo, wanting to finish what he started last night. Triple H pulls out a doctor's note, he wasn't cleared to wrestle, but who was available for a match was a guy Ric Flair had been looking after for these past few weeks, Dave Batista. During the Steiner vs Batista main event, Randy Orton surprised everyone by getting involved in the match, allowing Triple H, Flair and Batista to give Steiner an absolute beating at the end of the match. The four men raised their arms afterwards, signalling that this could very well be some sort of new faction. The following week, Steiner called out Triple H, but Steiner ended up getting Triple H and his three new friends. Scott managed to even the odds with a concealed lead pipe, but during the main event of the show, Scott took another beating at the hands of Triple H, Randy Orton, Ric Flair and Batista. On the February 3rd episode of Raw, Triple H formally introduced this new group as Evolution. Steiner defeated Chris Jericho in the main event to become the #1 contender for the world belt, and so Triple H vs Scott Steiner 2 was set in stone. The next two episodes of Raw were pretty standard in terms of the build-up. Steiner got the upper hand against Evolution on the February 17th episode, and the following week, the team of Booker T and Scott Steiner defeated Triple H and Batista in a tag team match. Thanks to Steve Austin's scheduled return at No Way Out, the Steiner vs Triple H stuff was shifted away from the final segments of WWE Raw. No Way Out took place in Montreal, Quebec, and the world title match was put on third from last. Someone had to have said something to Steiner because right at the opening bell we get to see this, a wrestling hold, something that was more or less completely absent from Scott's moveset at the Rumble. Still, the crowd are already booing Steiner, so this doesn't bode well at all. Triple H has a big taped up leg. The injury was supposed to be from the Royal Rumble and the tag match on Raw had aggravated it further. So Steiner has a target, a body part he can work over, and I absolutely think this was done to give the match some sort of direction this time around. Have a listen to the fans cheering for the big scary Reign of Terror Triple H here.
Scott Steiner, very, very smart strategy to start this matchup.
This happens consistently when the two competitors switch up on offense. Hunter gets loudly cheered while Steiner gets booed. Steiner tries to take the bandage off Hunter's leg and Scott keeps focus on the injured limb. Scott then tries to kick Hunter and he ends up falling down himself. More attacks get aimed at the leg, and have a listen here while Steiner performs another exploder suplex.
What will this do to the psyche?
Steiner locks in a figure four and the Nature Boy has to break it up to save Hunter. This leads to Scott chasing Rick on the outside, and although Flair gets leveled, Triple H manages to take advantage. The Quebec crowd chant "You screwed Brett" at Earl Hebner as the match continues. Steiner gets choked on the outside by Flair and Triple H throws Big Papa Pump into the ring steps. And the crowd continue to be absolutely merciless when the two get back inside the ropes.
And the state champion.
Triple H is hobbled.
Hunter hits a neckbreaker. He then kicks Steiner, but his follow-up clothesline gets countered,
with a belly-to-belly suplex. To be fair, it's the first one here and it's over halfway through the match. They do the corner big boot again here and it again gets a good reaction. Triple H then tries to cheat and Earl Hebner puts an end to it, resulting in Triple H and Hebner going through a very similar routine where Triple H wants Earl to disqualify him but the referee refuses to do it. We then get this moment right here where neither man knows what the other has planned. Steiner ends up hitting another belly to belly but the game kicks out. Triple H then goes over the top rope after more awkward offense. Hunter takes a bump at the ring post before Steiner brings it back into the ring. After a few punches, Steiner hits another belly to belly suplex before Hunter gets brought to the top rope for a super Samoan drop. Steiner can't end the match though. The Nature Boy helps Triple H kick out. Flair then calls for Orton and Batista to hit the ring and Steiner takes care of Evolution. The distraction allows Hunter to try a pedigree but Steiner gets out and Hunter gets sent over the top. Interference from Randy Orton gives Triple H another opening and Steiner gets nailed with the world title but Big Papa Pump kicks out. Triple H immediately goes for a pedigree afterwards and that's it all over. Triple H retains the world title and Triple H heads on to WrestleMania 19. This one was better than the Royal Rumble encounter but that doesn't mean it was a good match either. The structure was much better, Steiner done more in the ring but it was still a pretty poor and pretty forgettable matchup. Vince McMahon must have instantly got buyer's remorse as Big Papa Pump was shifted away from the main events afterwards. As mentioned, he wasn't even booked for WrestleMania, which is crazy considering he just had 2 world title matches previously. So the question is, what went wrong? This is one of those ones where it really depends on who you listen to and really, it comes down to what you want to believe because every perceivable theory has been thrown out there. Let's get the big one out of the way first, the one that's easy to say. Triple H sandbagged Scott Steiner and Triple H sabotaged Steiner in both matches, going out of his way to make Scott look as bad as possible. I think all you need to do is actually pay attention to the 2 matches and the matches Scott had afterwards, and you'd be able to see that this really wasn't the case, in my opinion anyway. I nor anyone else reporting on this match was inside the ring, so no one will ever know except Hunter and Scott. Scott says he was sabotaged, and again, I like Scott Steiner, but this wasn't the first time he said he'd been sabotaged in a title match either. Looking at the moves and how Triple H sold, you don't see any clear evidence that Hunter was shifting his weight or making it hard for Scott to lift him. Hunter clearly jumps for every suplex, and he even jumped for the botched underhook powerbomb, but again, I wasn't in the ring, so we can never say for sure. By watching this match though and the countless other Triple H matches I've watched over the years, I don't see anything that clearly shows Hunter was sandbagging. What we do see clear evidence of though is Steiner getting out of breath and Steiner having trouble standing up. But one could say that's because he was dealing with an opponent who wasn't playing ball. Remember how Steiner didn't work any televised matches after Survivor Series and before the Rumble? Well, it was said that the house show matches he took part in didn't go down well at all. Hunter apparently noticed that his upcoming opponent's conditioning was bad, and single matches between Steiner and Hunter, matches that were booked in order to prepare both men for pay-per-view, were changed to tag team matches, giving Steiner time to work on his cardio. Hunter and Steiner then had a few singles matches while cameras weren't rolling, and it's been reported and rumoured that Hunter wasn't happy with having to work with Steiner being in such bad shape. That being said, I still don't think he purposely sabotaged pay-per-view matches to make a point. Triple H was still going to be champion anyway. There's another theory though that makes way more sense. It's not much of a theory and more of a fact. Steiner was dealing with injuries. Steiner had drop foot syndrome, a muscular weakness in the foot that makes it difficult to lift the front part of your foot up. On top of this, he was still recovering from a career plagued with injuries, including some serious back pain. And to me, that would explain the state of the matches much more easily than saying Hunter sabotaged them. Triple H was also slowly recovering from a groin injury, put 2 injured superstars in the ring, and well, this is what you get. The mixture of both men's physical issues is a far more believable explanation in my opinion. I could be wrong of course, but it's just what I think. Steiner was limited here too, no doubt. His best days were definitely behind him, and that can't be overlooked either. So that leads us to another question. Why on earth would you put these two in a main event match that lasted 17 minutes? Why would you do it again in another match and give them another 13 minutes?
Steiner destroying mid-carders in short, impactful matches surely would have been a better idea here, letting Scott get used to the landscape while still getting over and healing up his injuries. All in all, I don't blame Scott even though he was bad in the ring here. I don't blame Hunter even though his reputation precedes him. I blame whoever had the idea of booking these two in 2 straight pay-per-view matches and allowing the matches to go over 5 minutes. It's baffling that this got okayed. It's a poor booking decision, and because Hunter was the champion, Scotty Steiner definitely got the short end of the stick. Steiner came out looking way worse than Hunter. Steiner would move into a storyline that included Stacy Keibler and Test, while Triple H would continue dominating the main event scene. The damage had been done though. Scott didn't get another main event title shot on pay-per-view, and he would get released in the summer of 2004. Scott holds a lot of resentment towards Triple H and Stephanie. He blames Hunter for his poor WWE run, and again, I have to stress, I nor anyone else making these videos really knows what happened, so I'm not going to try to say who was right or who was wrong. In response to Steiner, Triple H said that guys who leave the WWE are always going to talk poorly about him because it gets them over with fans who dislike the company.
Scott Steiner a few weeks ago, where he not only completely buried you and Sean.
Yeah, it's everybody's got to blame somebody for not making it in the business. You know, I don't pay attention to that stuff, and quite honestly, I'm sure if I saw Scott Steiner tomorrow, we'd get along just fine. You know, when you are no longer in the limelight, you need to talk about the people in the limelight to keep yourself current and to keep yourself viable. You know, the best, I've heard it said a million times by guys that come in, when you work in the indies, the best thing you can do is complain about guys like me burying you in the WWE because it just gets you booked more often because it creates controversy, you know.
Either way, the Triple H versus Scott Steiner rivalry is one that I'm sure everyone wants to forget, including Scott, including Hunter, and including us, the fans who watched at home. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.
Time to play the game! Time to play the game.
Alright, so this is the final part of our look at the whole Triple H versus Kevin Nash rivalry that took place in WWE. I remember wanting to cover this all in one video, but I talked too much nonsense, so yeah, it ended up being a 3-parter. The first video looked at Triple H versus Kevin Nash during the Ruthless Aggression era. The second video covered the Triple H and CM Punk Night of Champions 2011 match, which also included Kevin Nash. And in today's video, we're going to check out the Triple H and Kevin Nash Sledgehammer match from TLC 2011. I hear people ripping into this match quite often, and I think when people hear the word sledgehammer ladder match, they immediately think of something that just couldn't work, especially with a big guy like Kevin Nash. But hopefully today I can change your opinion, because I actually enjoyed this match and it definitely exceeded my expectations. So let's see how it all came about. As a quick reminder, Nash was supposed to face CM Punk at Night of Champions 2011, but Nash was unable to perform and therefore Triple H stepped in. Triple H and Kevin Nash started off as friends during this storyline, but Nash had manipulated and lied to Hunter in order to secure himself a job and also to take out CM Punk. Nash thought he was doing the right thing. He wanted Triple H and himself to return to the good old days of the Clique, but even with CM Punk giving Triple H a hard time, the game felt he had to do what was best for business and not what was best for his friends and himself. Nash would attack Hunter and Punk during the Night of Champions match, but in the end Triple H still won. And the next night on Raw, CM Punk said there's a conspiracy going on in WWE. Apparently someone in the office is responsible for Kevin Nash's attacks, someone's also responsible for The Miz and R-Truth interfering in the Night of Champions match, and someone's manipulating things behind the scenes to keep CM Punk held down. Hunter shows up and he gives Punk a title match. He'll face champion John Cena and Alberto Del Rio in a triple threat Hell in a Cell match. But Hunter also said that Punk needs to get it through his skull that there's no conspiracy going on. Punk explains that it's maybe not Hunter who's responsible for all this, but someone is definitely using the fact that Hunter and Punk don't like each other, and they're trying to use it for their own benefit. Just then, John Laurinaitis shows up and he tells Triple H not to believe a thing that Punk says. He's only upset because he couldn't beat the game last night at the pay-per-view. Laurinaitis does agree that Triple H is losing control of Monday Night Raw, but it's all because of Punk, and therefore Laurinaitis has no other choice but to fire CM Punk. Triple H reminds Laurinaitis that the game's above him in the pecking order. CM Punk is not fired, but by the end of the night, someone will be. Once Triple H gets to the bottom of this, someone will lose their job. Later in the night, R-Truth and The Miz tried to apologise for interfering in the Night of Champions match. Their punishment was a $250,000 fine each and a tag match against CM Punk and John Cena. But after that tag match, Triple H decided to fire Miz and R-Truth without any explanation. Triple H didn't get a chance to talk about it backstage. He got attacked by Miz and Truth. Raw would go off the air with the tag team getting thrown out of the building, and it was made clear that Triple H's control over Raw was indeed slipping through his fingers. The next week, Triple H said he used R-Truth and The Miz. He got one more main event out of them before letting them go, and he also reminded fans that Kevin Nash had been fired from WWE while explaining that he was doing what was best for business. But a few Raw superstars were not happy with Triple H's decisions on this night, mainly Dolph Ziggler, Christian, and Cody Rhodes. David Otunga would suggest a lawsuit against Triple H, and these heels who were unfairly treated on Raw decided to go ahead and take action against the WWE COO. The next week, on the October 3rd episode of Raw, Triple H sought a vote of confidence. This was all spearheaded by John Laurinaitis, of course. Things had escalated with The Miz and R-Truth also filing a lawsuit, and on top of that, Miz and Truth showed up at Hell in a Cell and they caused this scene in the main event. Triple H explained that he's old school, he likes seeing people beat the hell out of each other, and he thinks the fans that tune into WWE also enjoy seeing people beat the hell out of each other. Hunter wants fans to have a good time. It's those fans who Triple H works for, and it's certainly not anyone who stands around the ring right now. And Triple H is very curious to hear if these superstars think differently, or if Triple H should think differently about how to go about things. Wade Barrett, the spokesman for these superstars with grievances, says that Triple H is providing an unsafe working environment because Triple H can't control his talent. Hunter enjoys chaos, he even admits it himself. But Triple H shoots back by reminding fans of the Nexus, a faction led by Wade Barrett who tried to take over WWE. The only reason Barrett's upset with Triple H's chaos is because Wade Barrett isn't the one causing it. Mike Chioda represents the referees, and he says things have never been this bad for officials of WWE. For the first time in 23 years, Chioda's afraid to come into work. The Divas aren't happy either, and Jerry Lawler gets in the ring to say that Raw is indeed becoming too chaotic, but it's not Triple H's fault, it's someone behind the scenes trying to sabotage Hunter. The thing is though, it's everyone else who's paying for it. So the male roster, the female roster, and the referees, everyone votes no confidence. Jerry Lawler's the first man to walk out and leave his job. The superstars then follow as the crowd chant Triple H. The referees walk away from their job. Michael Cole gets up and leaves, as does Booker T. Even the cameramen give up their work at WWE. Jim Ross ends up being the last person left. The crowd cheer for Jim as he remains in his seat, and the crowd boo him when he stands up and he walks away. John Laurinaitis comes out to get a good look at Triple H standing there all alone, and Hunter says he's sorry as Raw goes off the air. While things may have seemed bleak for the COO, the vote of no confidence would lead to a memorable opening to Monday Night Raw the following week. And yes, all of this does circle back to Kevin Nash. Raw opens up and there's no commentators, no ring announcer, and no official in the ring. Triple H comes out and he talks about the big walkout the week prior. Hunter says the guys and girls didn't walk out on him, they walked out on the fans. Everyone's in the parking lot holding some sort of solidarity rally, and Triple H makes fun of everyone who walked out because WWE must have been too tough for them. Triple H has an option, he can step down. If he does step down, everyone in the parking lot will come back to work. Apparently they all have their gear with them tonight. The fans in the arena don't want Triple H to step down. Triple H can't bring himself to quit either, so the guys in the parking lot can kiss his ass. Hunter says he'll get a broomstick and wrestle the broomstick for 2 hours if he needs to, saying that a broomstick would give him a better match than most of the superstars in the parking lot anyway. Hunter says come hell or high water, the fans will get a show tonight and Triple H will be the man to present and host that show. John Cena then appears, and John says he wasn't involved in the group's decision last week, even though Cena got brutally attacked in that Hell in a Cell match by Miz and R-Truth. Cena has confidence in Triple H, he's worked for some of the worst GMs of all time, so Cena's staying on Monday Night Raw. Cena loves the unsafe working environment. Sheamus has confidence in Triple H. Sheamus says he respects Hunter and he didn't come to Raw to sit in a parking lot with a bunch of losers, so Sheamus is on board. Finally, CM Punk, a man who made things personal with Triple H just a few weeks earlier, comes to the ring, and Punk says he's the man who made walking out cool, but Punk didn't break any contracts when doing so. If there's anyone who has a reason to walk out of WWE, it's CM Punk, seeing as his mic keeps getting cut off, he's being jumped over and over again by Kevin Nash, and there's someone in the office playing games to make life difficult for the Second City Saint. But Punk thrives in unsafe working conditions, and yes, I know there's some irony in that statement, but Punk thinks people should settle their differences in the ring, and that's what WWE is all about, so Punk's gonna stay too. The big question is though, what's next? What should these four guys do on Monday Night Raw? So Triple H books a match, John Cena versus Sheamus. Triple H will referee the bout and CM Punk can drop all the pipe bombs he wants on commentary. Punk agrees to do it if he can wear Triple H's blazer. Hunter also wants Punk to ring the bell to start the match and Punk agrees only if he gets double pay. It's so good. The match gets underway, Punk is excellent on commentary as always. Things are just getting good, but then Vince McMahon comes to the ring and the match gets stopped. McMahon says that he loves what Triple H has been doing and he loves the Wild West style of Monday Night Raw that Hunter's produced, but not everyone likes it, including those in the parking lot and the board of directors. Vince McMahon fought the decision, but there was nothing he could do. Triple H has been relieved of his duties and he will no longer run Monday Night Raw. John Laurinaitis is now the interim general manager. The superstars come back, some are happy, some are clearly not happy. Laurinaitis goes on a power trip right away by firing Jim Ross only to hire him back the next week just to show he could. He reinstated R-Truth and The Miz, and he also booked a tag team match for these two at the Vengeance pay-per-view against CM Punk and Triple H. At Vengeance during the tag team match, Triple H was attacked by a returning Kevin Nash. Triple H was too busy dealing with his former best friend and CM Punk ended up getting pinned in the middle of the ring. After the match, Kevin jackknifed Hunter and Hunter landed awkwardly when taking the bump, but do keep in mind this was all planned. This wasn't a real injury or anything like that. The jackknife was replayed a few times and the commentators talked about how this didn't look good at all for the game, and so fans had a suspicion that Triple H was going to take some time off. The next night on Raw, Triple H said he was always told you can make money or you can make friends in the wrestling business, and Hunter thought he was lucky to have both and more. He had success, he got well paid, he had friends such as Shawn Michaels, Sean Waltman and Kevin Nash, but it turns out Kevin Nash wasn't a close friend. The money in the business side of things was more important to Big Sexy. Nash tried to break Triple H's neck at Vengeance, and Triple H says even if this sounds corny, Kevin Nash broke Triple H's heart. Triple H though wants to take it out on Kevin Nash. Hunter tells Nash to get in the ring for an ass kicking of a lifetime, but Hunter doesn't get Nash, he gets John Laurinaitis. Hunter tells Ace to shut up and stay out of the ring. Laurinaitis also has to give Nash a contract that Nash can't refuse, and if Laurinaitis can't find Kevin, then Triple H will go to Kevin's home, and his actions will cause WWE a whole lot of embarrassment. Turns out Nash was in the building, he attacks Hunter from behind with a sledgehammer, and it looks like further damage has been done to Triple Triple H's neck. Backstage, Triple H collapses and he has to get put in an ambulance, but Big Nash tells the doctors and trainers to stop what they're doing so Nash can help his old buddy. While still on a stretcher, Triple H then gets set up against the wall and Nash gets in another shot with his sledgehammer. According to Kevin, the Triple H vs Nash match was supposed to take place at Survivor Series, but because The Rock was coming back for a tag team match, WWE wanted to put the Hunter vs Kevin match off until the TLC pay-per-view, and that explains why Triple H was written off TV for a few weeks. Michael Cole announced the next week on Raw that Triple H would be out for at least 5 weeks due to the injuries caused by Kevin Nash. It was also announced via WWE's website that Kevin Nash had been re-signed by John Laurinaitis. On the 7th of November episode of Raw, Nash cut an in-ring promo where he said he owes no one an explanation for what he did, except for one guy sitting in Connecticut with a headache, and that's Triple H. Nash says he should have buried Triple H back in 1995 when he walked into the company wearing slacks and a sports coat, but it was Shawn Michaels who said Hunter's got something. So Nash let Hunter join the clique and Triple H ended up winning Nash over. The two become friends over the years and the two go on to have their careers. Nash returns at the 2011 Royal Rumble and he gets the biggest pop of the night, and Nash thinks it would be a great time to put the band back together and the clique should have one more run at the very top of WWE. Nash doesn't get a reply from Triple H, so Nash feels betrayed. Kevin says his friendship with Triple H would lead to Hunter's rise on the totem pole. Hunter would always be nothing if it wasn't for Nash, and Nash feels disgusted he was offered nothing more than a Legends contract when Kevin knows he could still win a World Championship. So, by attacking Triple H, Kevin Nash just booked himself in a main event match and a main event feud. And the sledgehammer attack proved to everyone that Kevin Nash knows how to play the game. This was a good promo, I thought, a good blend of reality and fiction. The next week, Raw was held in the TD Garden in Boston, the same place where the Royal Rumble took place, and Santino went to the ring to talk about his past Rumble performances. Kevin Nash would interrupt Santino, pretending to be all friendly, before flooring Santino with a big boot. Kevin said he blew the roof off the arena when he appeared in the Rumble earlier in the year, and his good friend Triple H didn't have the business sense to hire him immediately afterwards. Nash then hit Santino with a jackknife before leaving the arena, and this would lead to Nash having his first match on Raw since 2003, but we'll come back to this in a moment. On the December 5th episode of Raw, David Otunga told Kevin Nash that he was booked for a match at TLC. Triple H had been cleared to wrestle, and Big Sexy was going to face the game in a ladder match. Nash says he doesn't do ladder matches, and Otunga said this one's going to be different. Suspended above the ring will be a sledgehammer, and whoever retrieves the weapon can legally use it in order to win the match. Nash quickly changes his mind and he decides, yeah, he can do ladder matches. In reality, Nash was a little dumbfounded by this idea. He says he takes one day at a time and he didn't stop to think about the Survivor Series match being cancelled. The WWE's next pay-per-view after Survivor Series is of course TLC, so Nash had a oh shit moment when he realised his big match would have to include a stipulation that fits in with the pay-per-view. A ladder match with a big dude like Kevin sounds like a disaster, especially at this point in his career, but let's not pass judgment until we see the actual match. Laurinaitis booked a Nash vs Santino match for this episode of Raw, and Nash made quick work of Santino. A knee strike, a sidewalk slam, a big boot, and a jackknife powerbomb ended the bout in around 60 seconds. Kevin threatened to destroy Santino with a sledgehammer after the match, but he decided to just intimidate Santino instead. The following week, WWE presented the Slammy Awards, and this episode of Raw also featured the return of Triple H. Hunter got a great ovation on his way to the ring, and after watching a replay of the sledgehammer attack by Kevin, Triple H said Big Sexy should have finished the job because the game's back. Triple H thinks his relationship with Kevin may have been built on lies and deceit all along, but it won't matter at TLC because might will make right. Triple H will climb the ladder because he's right. He'll grab the hammer because he's right. And he'll bring the hammer down on Nash again and again because he's right. This Sunday, all the lies and deception ends. The rivalry also ends. Triple H will prove that he's right. And as for Big Sexy, Kevin Nash is done. Alright, so now you've got the complete story, starting in the summer of 2002, ending in the winter of 2011, and told over 3 videos. This is where it ends, the Sledgehammer ladder match at WWE TLC. Now, this would have been a tough match for Kevin Nash. The ladder stipulation doesn't help. He's at an age where a match like this just can't be beneficial, and he's also not working full time. To pull this off, Triple H was going to have to carry a lot of the work while also making Big Nash look as imposing and as intimidating as possible. And right from the opening bell, Triple H does what he has to do. Hunter goes down right away and he has to think fast to avoid getting punished in the corner. Hunter lays in a ton of strikes here, but Kevin comes back with a knee strike and there's a sense of urgency here. Nash almost trips up while trying to stay on his opponent. The two counter each other again in the corner while laying in strikes, but it's Nash who brings Hunter down again. So the game might have to use his speed to overcome his former friend. A running forearm strike sends Kevin to the outside. Nash gets his head whacked on the announce desk and Triple H then tries to grab a ladder, but he ends up taking a big boot to the back, and this allows Big Nash to lift that ladder and knock Hunter over the guardrail. Nash puts a ladder in the ring as Triple H wakes up and the game performs a diving forearm from the top of the announce table. Nash gets knocked over the guardrail, but a back elbow buys him enough time to climb back over, and then Big Kev performs Snake Eyes on the game. The back and forth match continues with Kevin getting thrown into the ring post. Hunter then grabs another ladder and back inside the ring he's gonna target Nash's legs and knees. It's no secret that Nash dealt with quadricep injuries to the point where it became the most played out meme in wrestling history, but Hunter's now found his target and he's gonna put a lot of focus on Nash's weak point. Triple H attacks both the left and right sides here by the way, but you get the idea. Triple H goes to work, using the ladder to inflict as much damage as possible. He sandwiches the big man's leg in the ladder and he proceeds to violently stomp on it. We then see a spot that I thought was great. It's a figure 4 where the ladder stays wrapped around Nash's leg. Triple H suplexes that ladder right on top of Kevin, but then somehow Nash gets up and he whips Hunter into a ladder that was leaning against the corner. Hunter flies out of the ring and Nash proceeds to push the ladder right into Triple H's head. A ladder gets set on the middle turnbuckle before Nash brings Hunter back into the ring. Nash performs a sidewalk slam on another ladder and there's no way that couldn't have hurt. Triple H screams in agony as Nash thinks about what he's gonna do next. The other ladder gets moved to the bottom turnbuckle and Nash performs a catapult. The crowd falls silent here as it looks like it's all over for the game. Nash then begins clearing the announce table for a jackknife, but Hunter counters it with a backdrop, and now's the time to try and get up and get that sledgehammer. Triple H almost gets it too, but Nash gets back in the ring and Hunter gets stopped with a clubbing blow to the back followed by a clothesline. Hunter then gets thrown back in the corner and Nash then performs a choke slam. We don't see that too often from Big Sexy. Nash grabs a table from under the ring, he sets it up and he tries again for a jackknife, but Hunter pushes him into that ladder in the corner and the game sends Nash out of the ring with another strike from the ladder. Triple H tries again to grab the sledgehammer, he has difficulties unhooking it and Nash is able to climb up too to give Hunter a punch to the face, but Triple H swings the hammer twice and Nash falls off the ladder and through the table. Honestly, this could have been the best bump Nash has ever taken, though I am a sucker for the giant powerbombing Big Sexy on Nitro. Still, Triple H takes the sledgehammer, meaning he's now legally allowed to use it as a weapon. A referee gets in the ring to count the upcoming pinfall or check for a submission, and Triple H goes to work. Nash gets hit multiple times and all Triple H has to do is cover his opponent. Hunter gets rid of the ladder, that won't be needed anymore, and Kevin Nash takes a pedigree in the middle of the ring. This should be the end of it, right? Well, Hunter isn't through just yet. He wants to hit Kevin one more time with that hammer. While on his knees, Nash puts up the click hand gesture, hoping that an old friendship may save him from even more punishment. But Triple H tells Nash to suck it and Big Sexy gets knocked out. Hunter covers Nash and Hunter wins the sledgehammer ladder match. This time, it's Kevin Nash being carried out on a stretcher as Triple H celebrates in the ring. The crowd goes nuts, and that's how it ended. I thought the match was absolutely fine, and I thought it went beyond what many fans could have expected. All things considered, I really don't think there was any more you could ask of Kevin Nash here, and Triple H made everything Nash did look good. I think with a lot of wrestling matches, especially those that feature a superstar from the past, if you set your expectations accordingly, you really can't go wrong, and you might even find yourself enjoying matches that you initially thought didn't sound too good on paper. Seeing Triple H versus Kevin Nash in a sledgehammer ladder match will immediately make you think, oh god, this can't be good. And you can easily find 10-year-old internet posts where fans laughed at the idea. It does sound a bit WCW 2000s to be honest, but you'll also find posts after the match where people were surprised that the bout wasn't all that bad. Of course, there's also the usual group of fans who just despise anything Triple H or Kevin Nash would do 10 or even 25 years ago. But I say give this one another watch and enjoy it for what it is. It's not a match of the year candidate at all, but it's still fun and I thought it was a good way to end the rivalry. Thanks for watching this one guys, I hope you enjoyed it and take care.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Now breathe out. Hands up, now hands down. Back up. Tell me what you gonna do now. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Keep rolling, 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 rolling.
The Brothers of Destruction and DX, this is going to be a tough one. For fans of the Attitude Era and even afterwards, it didn't get any better than these two teams, and even if you weren't a fan of these guys, they were still very important in shaping the WWF or WWE and helping the company in terms of popularity. It's interesting how both teams began their on-screen relationships around the same time period, with Shawn, Hunter and The Undertaker all being present for the debut of the Kane character, and as those early days continued on, DX, Kane and Taker were all intertwined right up until the original DX collapsed in 1998. For many people, D-Generation X and the Brothers of Destruction were a part of their childhoods. All four men became cornerstones of WWE, and they had an insane amount of fan support whether they were good guys or bad guys. Quite simply, they were four legends of the company. Time moves on though, and time doesn't wait for anybody. As the WWE evolved over the years, so did the professional and personal lives of these four legends. Triple H became way more hands-on behind the scenes. Glenn Jacobs would become the mayor of Knox County. Shawn Michaels retired and he began working with the talent at NXT. And The Undertaker, well, the dead man was still competing in the ring, searching for a final match that would satisfy his desire to leave wrestling on a high note. In 2018, the idea of DX getting back together to face the Brothers of Destruction sounded impossible, mainly due to HBK's retirement and Glenn Jacobs getting so heavily involved in politics. But strange things can happen when the WWE go to Saudi Arabia, and indeed, it felt strange when a DX versus Brothers of Destruction match was announced for the Crown Jewel 2018 show. Let's take a look at what could only be described as a train wreck match that maybe shouldn't have happened at all on November 2nd, 2018. When The Undertaker retired Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 26, it felt a little bittersweet for many fans, including myself. HBK was still putting on incredible performances all the way up to 2010, even outperforming many of the younger main eventers on the roster, but Shawn thought it was time to go and he talked about ending his career on a high note. HBK stated the best way to go is to leave fans wanting more, and he didn't want to be another guy who couldn't perform the way he once did during the twilight years of his career. So while I, and I'm sure many others, wanted Shawn to hang around and have more matches, his decision to leave while still being the showstopper in the main event was understandable. Rumours began circulating during 2016 regarding a potential Shawn Michaels return. The 2017 Royal Rumble was being held in Shawn's hometown of San Antonio, Texas, inside the Alamo Dome. The event marked the 20th anniversary of Shawn beating Psycho Sid to reclaim the World Wrestling Federation Championship in the same venue. And the rumours went into overdrive when AJ tweeted out a pay-per-view mock-up featuring HBK and AJ standing in front of the San Antonio skyline. Unfortunately, this match didn't happen, but Shawn and AJ did talk about the potential matchup on Table for Three, a WWE Network show where superstars discuss practically anything while having dinner. What Shawn says to AJ is very fascinating, and we can learn a bit more about Shawn's mindset here when it came to returning for one more match. On the Table for Three show that featured Kevin Nash, AJ Styles and Shawn Michaels, AJ said he got interested in a Shawn Michaels match when he heard HBK was attending the Performance Center. AJ wanted the higher-ups to ask Shawn if he wanted to do something at the Royal Rumble. Nash said he saw AJ's tweet and thought the match would be sweet, and Shawn says that he too saw the graphic and Shawn admired the fact that AJ was keeping his name out there by tweeting out the mock-up. HBK then revealed that writers had previously pitched ideas for Shawn to come back, but this Royal Rumble match in the Alamo Dome was actually pitched to Shawn by Vince McMahon himself. HBK liked the idea of wrestling styles. He rubbed his hands together while thinking about what kind of match the Heartbreak Kid and the Phenomenal One could potentially have and what story they could tell in the ring. Shawn found it a fascinating prospect. He knew he and AJ would have to work their tails off, but ultimately Shawn admitted that he couldn't wrestle to the level he once could, and there's an awkward silence here when Shawn asks AJ and Nash who would go over in that match. Who wins an AJ Styles versus Shawn Michaels bout? If Shawn wins, it does nothing for AJ, and AJ doesn't look good. If AJ wins, then Shawn's legacy maybe gets further tarnished due to coming out of retirement just to take a loss in San Antonio. Plus, he thought it would be anticlimactic as well. AJ agrees with Michaels, saying it would be a risk to go out again after having such a good match with The Undertaker. And Shawn then says that he looks at the whole story arc of the Heartbreak Kid, from throwing Marty Jannetty through the glass at the barber shop to defying The Undertaker before the last Tombstone Piledriver. HBK considers that whole stretch the story of his career. Another match would sit independently away from that whole arc and it would also feel pointless. AJ compares this to the Rocky V movie, saying it was unnecessary. So, the big takeaway here is that Shawn felt a return match would need to fit into the story of his character, and it also sounds like Shawn didn't want to come back just to take another loss. We're going to come back to this soon. Creative and story arcs, of course, were not the only reason for working a show in Saudi Arabia, but more on this in a moment. Absolutely out of the blue, a match between Triple H and The Undertaker was announced for the Super Showdown 2018 event in Melbourne, Australia. Hunter came out to the ring on the August 20th, 2018 episode of Raw, and he said after watching SummerSlam he got the itch to lace up his boots again and once again be the game. He thought this would happen, and that's why when Vince called him a few weeks prior to pitch a match at Super Showdown, Hunter agreed. When Vince said this match would be against The Undertaker, the game wasn't so sure. The end of an era Hell in a Cell match he and Taker had meant a lot to Triple H, and when he, Shawn and Taker stood on the entranceway at the end of that match, it changed all three men. Shawn would disappear for good, The Undertaker's streak would eventually come to an end, and Triple H would put on a suit. The era really did end that night and everything changed. Hunter thought about it and he agreed to do the match only if The Undertaker agreed to be the Phenom one more time. A bygone era was gonna return. This Super Showdown match will feature The Undertaker in the game, and it'll be one last time. The following week, Shawn Michaels announced that he was going to Australia too so he can see the match in person. HBK then said The Undertaker's chances weren't so good this time around, seeing as The Undertaker's streak ended and some of that mystique has been taken away from the Phenom. Triple H, on the other hand, is still the game and still the cerebral assassin, and Triple H has a lot more left in the tank in comparison to The Undertaker. The dead man shows up, and Taker says Shawn just made this thing personal. Taker's already put Shawn and Hunter down and the degenerates can't accept it. Shawn only thinks Triple H is gonna win because Taker took away Shawn's career, and Shawn says he stayed away from the ring because he's a man of his word, because he respects the fans and because he respects The Undertaker. The crowd chants one more match, and Shawn says he hears that in every arena he goes to. He gets people asking him for one more match backstage. He turns down millions of dollars every year, and he's done it all out of respect for The Undertaker. Undertaker wonders if it's really respect, or is it fear? Because if Shawn does come out of retirement, there's only one guy he can come after, and that's the dead man. And the dead man says he would put Shawn down again. HBK knows it, the fans know it, Taker knows it, but for now, Taker's gonna focus on putting Shawn's buddy down again at the Super Showdown event. This promo here was obviously the strongest hint so far that Michaels was planning to have another match, but it still in a way felt unlikely after what Shawn said in interviews following WrestleMania 26. If we go back to what Shawn said to AJ on Table for 3 within the context of storylines, it kinda made sense. Shawn versus The Undertaker again wouldn't feel independent from HBK's story arc. It would fit right in at the end, and it was simple yet brilliant. Shawn says he's staying away out of respect. Taker says Shawn's just afraid of him. So it's almost like Taker invited Shawn to come out of retirement and try his luck again. Over the next 2 weeks, it was revealed that Shawn Michaels was going to stand in Triple H's corner for the Melbourne match, so The Undertaker announced that Kane was going to return and stand in his corner. Kane had been active in WWE during late 2017 and early 2018, while making a few sporadic appearances through the year, but he was definitely winding down considerably to focus on a new career path. On the Raw before Super Showdown then, Shawn Michaels warned Kane not to step in the ring or get involved because the Big Red Machine will have to deal with the Heartbreak Kid. Kane then appeared behind Michaels and Shawn got floored after a big right hand. The lights then went out in the arena and The Undertaker then stood over Shawn when the lights came back on. Undertaker was just about to tombstone Shawn, but Triple H ran to the ring. The game fought both Brothers of Destruction, but on this night, DX weren't good enough. Shawn and Hunter take chokeslams, and The Undertaker decides to tombstone Triple H for good measure before leaving the ring with his little brother. Super Showdown was already getting panned by critics and fans before the event even took place, and that's because it was sandwiched between Hell in a Cell in September and Evolution in October. It felt superfluous to a lot of fans and it just added to an already bloated WWE calendar. Triple H versus The Undertaker should have felt like a bigger deal, and had the match taken place at WrestleMania then it might have felt a bit more important. But the WWE decided to do it at this show, and so did the game, and so did the Phenom. HBK couldn't help himself. He jumped on the apron a few times and he distracted The Undertaker more than once. He would then get physical with the dead man, and Kane would have to try and stop Shawn while also trying to maintain some order. Soon though, Kane would get more involved and he would try to make things difficult for Hunter. So Kane ended up taking sweet chin music and Triple H put the Big Red Machine through a table. The Undertaker gets the better of Hunter and Shawn was forced to watch his friend take a few hard chair shots. Michaels tried to reason with The Undertaker, and when that didn't work, Michaels got inside the ring and he got punched in the nose. Still though, all this bought Triple H enough time to hit a spine buster, but Taker kicked out of the cover. Shawn handed Triple H his sledgehammer, Kane passed a chair to The Undertaker. Hunter waxed the chair and the chair waxed the Phenom, but there's no referee to count the pinfall. In the end, Kane and Shawn get in the ring. Kane gets taken out with a low blow. The Undertaker tries to tombstone Michaels, but he takes a sledgehammer shot from Triple H, leading to HBK performing the super kick, and Triple H ends it with a pedigree. It was a bit messy, and it was, without a doubt, the weakest Undertaker versus Triple H match to ever take place on pay-per-view, with all the interference truly hurting the overall flow of the match. But it was done like this for a reason. It looks like DX and the Brothers of Destruction are gonna let bygones be bygones as D-Generation X help the brothers to their feet for a celebration. But Kane and Taker then attack DX and it's made clear that this isn't over. Triple H gets tombstoned and HBK gets put through a commentary table. Triple H and Shawn Michaels opened up Raw the following night and they talked about respect. Hunter talked about how he respected Shawn Michaels, how Shawn showed respect by sticking to his word and staying retired even when everyone else wanted him to wrestle, and HBK talked about how your respect for someone can change over time. Shawn had a long think about Super Showdown on the flight back from Australia. He thought about how he honoured his word not to wrestle out of a respect that didn't even exist. So when the flight landed, Triple H asked HBK a question. Are you ready? Hunter knows that Shawn's ready, but he wonders if the Brothers of Destruction are ready for D-Generation X at Crown Jewel. Shawn and Hunter reveal their D-Generation X shirts and they bring a formal return to the faction here. And fans pop when they realise that HBK maybe just announced his return to the ring. Later in the show, Michael Cole makes it official when he announces the match along with a match graphic, and then the internet went into overdrive. Remember how Shawn talked about his return having to be right creatively and it had to make sense for him to want to come back? Well, all that was thrown out the window because something that can't be argued is the fact that a lot of money was and still is involved in these Saudi Arabia shows. No matter what you may think of these shows, it's no secret that superstars who make these one-off appearances at these kind of events get paid very well. Fans didn't give a shit about any creative reasons for Shawn coming out of retirement. There were zero discussions about the AJ Styles conversation at Table for Three. It went straight to money and politics. And hey, you gotta admit too, even the most diehard of HBK fans had to look at this and see it for what it was. Shawn's opinion and reasoning has changed over the years. He stated it wasn't breaking his retirement vow and it was like a band getting back together for one night to have fun. He also said he could have earned a lot more money doing a singles match at WrestleMania instead of a tag match in Saudi Arabia, while also stating there wouldn't be another chance for all 4 of these guys involved to get together and have this bout. I think that's bullshit, by the way, because all 4 men were just back from Melbourne, Australia. But anyway, in short, HBK said it wasn't about the money. He didn't want to be in a tough position at WrestleMania where he's expected to wrestle a 5-star match against a younger guy. According to Michaels, it was just for fun. It was an opportunity that Michaels thought would never come up, and that's why he agreed to do it. Take from that what you will, it's completely your call, but you have to admit it's a little hard to believe, and trust me, I'm a huge HBK fan. I really wanted to see Shawn wrestle again, but I was kinda shocked when the match was announced. Crown Jewel 2018 also would end up surrounded in a lot of controversy, and there were calls for the show to get completely cancelled, but it went ahead and HBK, Kane, Triple H and Undertaker all performed in the main event. The circumstances, the location, the timing, all that overshadowed the in-ring return of one of WWE's greatest ever superstars. And again, gonna be honest, the WWE and Shawn Michaels should have known this was gonna happen. Also, just a little side note, it's okay to have mixed feelings about this. You could be a big HBK fan and still not agree with him coming back at Crown Jewel, it's fine. And it's also fine to have a hard stance on the matter, but don't feel bad if you're unsure how to feel about it. Not everything's black and white, particularly in the world of professional wrestling. The following week, a pre-tape promo aired featuring Kane and The Undertaker. The dead man repeated that it wasn't respect that kept Michaels retired, it was HBK's fear of the Reaper. Kane said Shawn was afraid of humiliation, the humiliation of getting defeated again by The Undertaker. But at Crown Jewel, when D-Generation X faced the Brothers of Destruction for the very first time, all of Shawn's fears will come true. A war will begin and end at Crown Jewel. Triple H can go back to the boardroom after his defeat and Shawn can shuffle back to the safety of retirement. DX had 3 words for the brothers, are you ready? The brothers have 3 words for DX, rest in peace. On The Undertaker's Last Ride documentary, there's a great outtake of this promo where the Phenom had 3 different words for Hunter and Shawn.
Go yourself.
The week after, Taker and Kane interrupted an in-ring DX promo. The brothers were seen in a graveyard and Taker said the DX reunion will serve as the vessel for the team's total annihilation. DX should have stayed away, they can't turn back the clock. They can't outrun the Reaper and they can't survive the Brothers of Destruction. Kane and Taker then reveal HBK and Triple H's tombstones and they tell Shawn and Hunter that DX will never rest in peace. It was DX though who got the last laugh during the build-up. Triple H interrupted a Brothers of Destruction promo this time and he lured Kane away from the ring, allowing HBK to hit Taker with sweet chin music. Taker sat up afterwards and DX got a little shaken up, but HBK showed everyone that he still had the ability to put The Undertaker down if the right opportunity presented itself. Alright, let's do it. Let's look at the match. A prime example of why some things are best left alone. It took a little time, but Shawn Michaels did finally say that he regretted performing in this match. But he only regretted it because he didn't know The Undertaker was trying to end his career with a great bout. HBK apologised to Taker, Kane and Triple H when he realised The Undertaker was seeking his final match, but trust me, if you haven't seen this yet, Shawn Michaels ends up being the best performer of the match. He has his bad moments too, just like everyone else, but in comparison to his dance partners, he didn't come out of it looking all that bad. The bad match is maybe not the most disappointing thing about all this, and it's maybe more about the fact that they allowed themselves to have the bad match in the first place. But enough of all that, you can be the judge here. Shawn and Hunter are wearing hybrid DX and NXT gear that I thought looked great, the old guard representing the new blood. And the stadium looks absolutely brilliant when the Brothers of Destruction make their way down to the ring. Loads of stalling at the beginning of the match, loads of shit talking, it settles down to Kane and Triple H, and Hunter starts it off by punching Kane in the face. He then counters in the corner and he tries to crotch chop, or chop his crotch, whatever, and Kane punches right back. Triple H stops Kane from tagging in the dead man. He gets the crowd fired up when he points to HBK. Shawn gets the tag, the crowd pops, and Michaels comes off the top rope with a double axe handle. HBK performs a swinging neckbreaker that he seems very proud of, but Kane sits up and Shawn almost gets chokeslammed. Kane then counters a sunset flip, he goes for a tombstone but Shawn reverses and he feigns a super kick. He laughs at Kane and he says he could have had him just then, but the brothers aren't in the mood for jokes tonight. Kane tags in The Undertaker and Shawn loses his smile when he has to face the Reaper for the first time since Mania 26. Triple H tells Shawn to go after the dead man, The Undertaker performs his cutthroat taunt, and Shawn tells Taker to suck it. Michaels gets in a few chops but he goes down after a big boot. Taker then softens up the arm and shoulder for Old School, but Triple H runs in to stop the dead man and this leads to Kane jumping in too. All four men fight in the ring, Shawn gets hung up in the Tree of Woe, Kane throws Triple H into Shawn and then disaster struck. While taking this bump, Hunter falls out of the ring and he tears his pectoral muscle, the same injury that more recently put Cody Rhodes on the shelf. You can see here how bad the injury was after the match, but even when watching the bout, you knew something was up. Shawn gets dumped out of the ring too so he can check on his teammate. The brothers wait in the ring to buy some time and get a damage report. And it's not good. HBK was likely relying on Triple H in this match, but Hunter's hurt, and Shawn, the guy who's been retired, might have to put in an extra bit of work tonight. Hunter's not completely out, he's going to do what he can, but he can't really use his right arm. He tries to chop with his left arm before sending Kane and Taker out of the ring, and the referee checks on Hunter while the cameras focus on HBK. Back inside the ring, Shawn takes Old School while Triple H looks like he's in absolute agony at the ring steps. HBK gets choked in the corner, but he manages to dodge a big boot. Hunter gets tagged in, and again he uses the left arm to chop the Phenom. Taker puts Hunter down with a clothesline. He brings the game over to the Brothers of Destruction's corner where Kane gets tagged in, and nobody really knows what to do. Hunter decides he's going to take a slam and he rolls away from an elbow drop afterwards. The referee rushes to Triple H to see if he's okay. He gets up and he trades strikes with Kane, even using his right arm for a punch and looking like he instantly regrets it afterwards. He then hits a DDT before conceding and he tags out. The pace quickens up when HBK lands his signature flying forearm and he smiles after performing the kip up. He tries to slam Kane, but that doesn't go too well, neither does the suplex counter that follows. Hunter comes back in for a double suplex that DX also struggle with, but Shawn goes upstairs and he turns back the clock with his diving elbow drop. HBK warms up the band for Sweet Chin Music. You can hear him shout "Come on Glenn" when Kane takes a bit too long turning around. Kane counters Sweet Chin Music with a choke slam, and then The Undertaker comes back in to punish Shawn in the corner. Taker performs Snake Eyes, a big boot and a leg drop. Hunter stops Taker from hitting a chokeslam so Shawn can nail Taker with a super kick, but still Taker sits up before Shawn and the match goes to the outside. Hunter saves Shawn from getting tombstoned on the announce table, and Hunter also performs this rough looking whip into the security barrier. That arm must have been totally out of action at this point. Kane makes Triple H pay with a chokeslam through the announce table, and that's going to be Hunter put out of action until the end of the match. From here, Shawn takes a beating from the Brothers of Destruction. Frequent tags from the brothers lead to Shawn taking a suplex and a sidewalk slam, and in between all this we have the usual punches, kicks and chokeholds. The stadium wasn't loud to begin with, but it's nearly silent at this point, and it feels like the excitement of the match just isn't there, and the guys in the ring really aren't doing a whole lot to get the audience back into it. Shawn manages to stop a Kane top rope attack and the big red machine slowly falls off the top rope. He then throws Taker into the ring post on the outside, and things then get comically bad when Shawn knocks Kane's mask off with a single punch. The camera zooms in on Michaels while Kane gets his mask back, and then what should have been a great moment in the match gets ruined by a poor landing when HBK moonsaults from the top to the outside. You can see the disappointment in Michaels' face, and Taker puts a hand on his chest as if to say, "Yeah, sorry about that." At this point, it's completely fallen apart, and you can sense everyone involved knows it's bad. Shawn tags in Hunter, and Triple H can't even run the ropes properly now as he delivers his signature facebreaker knee smash, and when he hits the Harley Race knee, the commentators have no choice but to address the injury. Still, he's able to hit a spinebuster on The Undertaker, and he counters a tombstone with a pedigree. He goes for the cover, Taker applies Hell's Gate, and the move gets broken up when Kane falls on his partner after taking Sweet Chin Music. All four men are down. The brothers then sit up and they look absolutely fucking wrecked as they get to their feet. They go for tandem tombstones, but a rake to the eyes from Shawn and a low blow from Triple H leads to both brothers getting super kicked, and Triple H pulls off an awful looking pedigree to end the match. Hunter and Shawn hug in the corner and they talk about the match. You can sense some relief here, and you can also sense that Triple H is seriously hurt. Not gonna lie, I felt let down after the match, as did many others. You don't know what to expect really, but this was definitely below expectations. On The Undertaker's Last Ride documentary, we get to see the atmosphere backstage after the match. Shawn says the match totally blew and he seems annoyed about the moonsault, while Triple H gets attended to by the Doctor and Shane McMahon. Taker said he had some personal problems going on at the time and he wasn't there mentally for the match at all. And Triple H talked about how he knew the match wasn't one that Taker would be happy calling his very last. It was gonna make Taker double down on himself and put him right back in that bad cycle. The match didn't give Taker closure. Fans quite simply don't like to think of it as Shawn's last match either, and they'd rather completely ignore it. It was a colossal flop that stung a little more because it featured 4 legends of a bygone era that fans once adored, and I'm sure there were a lot of fans as disappointed as the guys in the ring. Michael stayed retired, Triple H went back to the office, Kane wouldn't be seen competing in a WWE ring again until the 2021 Royal Rumble, and The Undertaker continued to search for his final match. His match with Goldberg was up next. It was another disaster, and if you want, you can check out my video on that match right now. If you've never watched this Brothers of Destruction vs DX match, yet you're a fan of all 4 of these guys, then don't bother. Seriously, don't bother. If you're an HBK fan, then stick with WrestleMania 26 as his last match and you'll be grand. Thanks for watching guys, and take care.